Welcome to the December
For the
6th,
work session? No.
2021 special called work session.
Yes, we do.
Tonight, there are 3 items on our agenda. Public comment is allowed that is germane to an agenda item. If you wish to speak, you are required to fill out a public comment card. And if you are speaking on behalf of an organization, you must fill out an affidavit that you have the authority of such said organization. Please remember, this is not a time to encourage the mayor or members of city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. Public comment will be allowed for a total of 10 minutes per agenda item and no more than 2 minutes per person. Public comment will be heard at the beginning of the item. Once the item is called, no other public cards will be accepted. Okay. Tammy, if you'd please call the first item.
Thank you, Mayor. That first item is recognition and presentation of City of Milton employee 5, 10, and 15-year anniversary pins. Mayor Lockwood.
Okay. I'm going to step down to the podium and we'll be presenting the pins. Our city manager, Steve Krokoff, will call your name. When your name is called, if you would please step forward for presentation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Our first one up for a 15-year pin, I think he's here tonight, Mayor Joe Lockwood. Next up for a 15-year pin is Roddy Motes. Roddy? And if everybody could just stay up after you get presented, that'd be great.
Roddy.
Stay up. We're gonna do a group picture. Our final 15-year pin for the evening is Robin McDonald. Robin?
Well, I guess only, 3 of us were not smart enough to be here?
All right, we are now moving to the 10-year pins. Our first 10-year pin is Jason Griffin. Jason? Our next 10-year pin is Andrew Noblet. Andrew, you here? Our next 10-year pin is Mark Haskins. Mark, you here? Okay, I see the next one in the audience, so I'm not going to strike out. Our next one is Chris Bradshaw. Chris? Next up for a 10-year pin is Glenn Addison. Glenn? And our final 10-year pin is Jared Richardson. Jared? Now, Mayor, we are going to do the 5-year pins. Our first up is Charles Fannin. Charles? Next 5-year pin is Jason Brand. Jason, you here? Next is Wendy Johnson. Anthony Del Campo. Justin Steele. Brad Aggerton. Chris Williams. I knew I said that. Billy Baker. Josh Boone. And finally, Patrick Turner. All right, can we get a big round of applause for all of our...
Stand up and be behind Not only, especially everybody that was recognized tonight, but all of our employees. I was saying the other night, it's amazed me over the last 15 years just to see the caliber of people that have committed themselves and working for the city of Milton. And they truly care. They put in way more effort than they have to, and it's really very rewarding. So we got a big round of applause for all of our employees and elected officials. Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Although this next one, the plaque for Marty Locke, we're going to have to reschedule. There was a conflict with Marty. So if the city clerk will please call the next item.
Mayor, that next item is discussion of text amendment RZ 21-14 to Chapter 64 related to business license to serve and sell alcohol as required in Chapter 4 alcoholic beverages. It's presented tonight by Ms. Bernadette Harville, our Assistant City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And our Planning Commission members, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm going to quickly go over a little bit of background to lead the discussion this evening. And I appreciate everyone's time. We're here to discuss this evening the recommended changes to Chapter 64 zoning related to the directions staff received from the City Council regarding consumption on premises of alcoholic beverages at certain establishments. Tonight's discussion will focus on the original direction provided by Council, as well as the feedback received from the Planning Commission members on November 17th. To provide a little bit of background, I'll briefly review the concept of food and beverage sales ratios, as well as the meaning of eating establishment or full-service restaurant. Then we'll get into the conversation of what types of establishments Council would like to permit to sell alcohol for consumption on premises. There'll be some discussion with the Planning Commission members, and then we'll talk about some next steps. It's just as a reminder, eating establishments are those establishments which are licensed to sell distilled spirits, malt beverages, or wine, and which derive at least 50% of its total annual gross food and beverage sales from the sale of prepared meals or food. So there you'll see below that, prepared food or meals over the total of food and beverage sales. Please remember that a restaurant must qualify as an eating establishment to be considered a full-service restaurant, but currently Milton does allow limited food service restaurants, and that would be any establishment that qualifies as a restaurant and has less than 50% of their food and beverage sales coming from the prepared food and meals side of the equation. Here is the chart that we presented to the Planning Commission as well as the CZIM that kind of shows what is currently going on mixed with the proposals that staff came up with related to the zoning recommendations from Council. So I'm going to start simply on the left-hand side. This is only regarding consumption on premises of alcohol beverages. So we're not getting into any of the other text amendments this evening, just this pertinent part of the conversation. If a restaurant comes in and qualifies as a restaurant and also as the eating establishment, meaning that 50-50 ratio, they would currently be allowed by right where zoning is allowed. So under the different tables you see in the form-based code, or under the other zoning sections in C1, C2, and MIX, only where zoning allows it would these be allowed by right. Currently, that's the way it is. We are continuing with that. That has not been changed. So now we're moving on to the discussion about what if the establishment does not qualify as having 50% of their food and beverage sales coming from prepared food or meals. Currently, if you do qualify under a use permit as an assembly hall or a rural agricultural event facility, you come before Council for a Council-issued use permit where allowed by zoning, and if you get that use permit, you could then apply for alcohol sales. Again, staff is not recommending to change that. That is as it is this evening. Where we get into some of the changes that we had based on Council feedback is this bottom quadrant right here. So anytime an establishment, whether they be a restaurant or a retail establishment, would come in and looking to have consumption on premise, but do not meet the 50% of food sales, we have them categorized under these 4 different categories. The first main question that we have for council this evening is, would they like to continue to consider establishments that derive less than 50% of their revenue from food to have alcoholic beverage consumptions on site? Planning Commission had some feedback as being opposed to this in general. And so that is the first question before we go on to any of the other conversation that we'd like to address and let you guys discuss with the Planning Commission members.
Okay. First, I do, and I want to recognize the Planning Commission for being here tonight. Thank you guys for being here and working together with us on this. So we're certainly interested in getting your feedback. So at this point, it may be appropriate, and then Steve, unless you've got something else, that maybe we do kind of open up for comments from the council and the Planning Commission at this point per Bernadette's point. So, anybody on council want to say something first? Laura?
Thank you to the Planning Commission for the time that you put in. I know that was a long meeting, and I watched it, so I know it's long. So thank you for your input. I concur with the Planning Commission. I saw where you struggled, and after the passage of Chapter 4 and where we are now with our land use and applications, we've had a flurry of applications that are more on the ratio of closer to bars. And I think that's why we hit the pause button and we're here tonight. So in hindsight, it's one thing to look at an ordinance on paper, but when you see the actual, the reality of the changes, they concerned me. As I look at Alpharetta and I look at their nightlife, and I think they're viable and have everything that I think we could have, they operate under a 50-50 alcohol to food ratio. So I support the vote that was taken by the Planning Commission, and I'm definitely in favor of maintaining the 50-50 in Milton.
Thanks. Anybody else? And we'll open up, anybody on the Planning Commission have any comments or share some thoughts? Go.
Yeah, so from my point of view, I think that we should be giving opportunity to our businesses to make certain decisions. And when you get right down to it, this particular decision leans heavily on choice from a citizen point of view. What choices do the citizens have, or what should they be able to have? And what my logic to get there could be a little bit twisty, and I don't want to necessarily lead you guys through all of that, but it's really all about what kind of options exist, for example, in the downtown area. If all we do is provide access to restaurants, I don't know that downtown Milton can just be a restaurant destination. To me, it's got to offer something else. We've got some vendors that have come before us and talked about, other options, and those options became complicated because of this particular rule. So what I'm worried about is that this particular rule is providing some kind of a roadblock to giving an option to a developer or to a what eventually becomes a source of entertainment for the downtown area. And again, by logic, I can lead you down that path. The problem is it takes about 45 minutes, so I'm not going to do it right now. But I do think that there is a good argument to be had that 50-50 is a little bit high. I don't know if 30 is the right number, but I would, for everybody who's up here who thinks 50-50 is the right solution, I just wanted to make sure people knew that I'm not necessarily of that opinion.
I'll piggyback a little bit on that, and I certainly agree with everybody's concerns. just to kind of go back in history, obviously we have a new downtown, Crabapple, as well as our other commercial areas. We want Milton to be a little different. We want to be cutting edge. So I think that's the reason in the past we opened up our percentages a little bit different and welcomed some businesses in. But I also agree, you got to be careful. We don't want that to, snowball. And again, I think as Councilmember Bentley said, sometimes you'll make decisions, but then you have to go back and relook at them, as you see how things are trending. A good example to me is the bicycle shop down the street here, like Whitetail. We gave them a limited pouring license. I have never seen where that's been abused. I see, guys go there and buy their bicycles, ride, have some camaraderie, a couple of beers afterwards or whatever. It probably makes it more of a hangout or destination point afterward. It probably helps their business. It probably helps the bicycle community and whatnot to be there. So I would hate to lock everything down on a 50. We may all agree that a 50-50 restaurant, like other areas, is kind of the bar. But I would also like to have a little bit of flexibility that the council and our citizens could look at things moving forward. Obviously, I won't be here, but I'd like to look, or my opinion is there should be some kind of mechanism where we've got a standard, but other people can bring something forward, and if the council, along with citizen input, think it's a good idea and want to see that, have some kind of avenue or way to do that. Anybody on the planning commission?
Yeah, I'd like to try to respond to that because we agree with you, Joe. What we're attempting to do is say 50-50 by right. All the other stuff, let's just put it in one big basket for the moment, can come to city council for approval. It's in the light of day, and it's not in a process that is concluded in a back room somewhere. As it was described to us, this process, our city manager called it, they will consult with city council. And I don't know what consultation means, but it seems like it's a great opportunity to avoid accountability. And I believe all of us on the Planning Commission are interested in your votes and how you view these alternate sort of business opportunities for the city. Don't want to rule out a lot of stuff, but we want it to be out in the light of day.
Anybody else? Peyton?
So a question for Steve. So if we don't do the buy right, anything over 50-50, like I think we had in the past, that we probably went a little too far. Are the options warrant and use permit? Are those the two options?
Those are two different options. A warrant is more akin to an administrative variance, and that would be what Commissioner Gilbert was referring to from our Planning Commission conversation, and that would be we've done that a couple of times with you already, where we brought something before you and got feedback from the council on what you were looking for. Whereas if you were going to do a use permit, it would be much more akin to some of the festivals and other types of use permits, which goes with the land in perpetuity. And it comes before council in a public hearing.
I'm going to chime in.
Samit?
Sorry.
Sure.
Oh, so, just to piggyback on that conversation, because I think one of our conversations that we were having in our Planning Commission meeting was, and I think the feedback that we had heard from the direction from you all was that, again, potentially looking into this going outside of a vote on city council, maybe through a warrant process or something else. But from our standpoint, one of our opinions is I don't see this being something where every meeting you've got two businesses who are coming up here for an opportunity to have an alternative type of a business where they can, sell something like this. This may be every so often. And from our standpoint, again, if it can still be where the vote still happens from council, you've got all the input, it's out here in the open, then we don't see why we can't just keep that process in place. It's not like this is something that there's going to be so many of these applications that are, that are going on or whatever. So from that standpoint, I think, at least my opinion, and I think a lot of us were like, why not just keep it the way it is, or keep it where council still makes that vote and everybody is here, public hearing that happens, and keep it like that.
Okay. And Samita, I would agree. I don't necessarily see it being, even if we bring everything before council, that it's going to be, every week or every month. I think you want to kind of have a balance where it's a tough enough process that, people that are lighthearted aren't going to go for it, but if it really makes sense and it's really a good use. I do want to say this not defensive staff, but, they basically have offered, a warrant type process, which there are several things. And as Steve mentioned, administrative variance, typical that the council sets guidelines, but then doesn't have to hear everything, because then staff has to do it within the guidelines that are set. And they may have, sometimes you'll have setback variances or whatever, where staff may, and I'm making that up, but 10% leeway or whatever, if professionally it makes sense. But I don't think staff wants to do that just to allow more things than the council wants. But it just, that's a process too that could be used and was offered. So I personally think that, it'll be more work on the council and citizens, but I don't think it's going to be that many. And I think if it'll be enough of a process that only the cream will rise to the top, that, is worthwhile for us to listen. If somebody has a bad idea that, they know the citizens aren't going to like in council, then they probably won't go forward with it. But that's my opinion. Laura, yep. Yeah, go ahead, Kurt, and then Laura.
I think two points on this. One is, I think when we asked, right now at the height of the development downtown, I think there's 8 that are asking for some variance off of the 50/50.
Current process that we've gone through has been about that number. Now, I don't know if they're all still in the process at this time.
But at least, so it kind of quantifies it. I don't think 8, which, some could argue this is the height of development in downtown Crab Apple. And Highway 9, I think, is, probably fairly similar. So I don't think it's a major task to put, it's easy for me to say, right, to put in front of council and say, hey, let's go through this. I think there should be a public discussion on this. I think neighbors should have some visibility into it and some say on it, and if they want to. And the other side of that, I think it's perception. I think if you look at everybody around us, nobody else is at this. We want to be known as, oh, you can go to Milton, let's open bars, whatever you want to call them. Do we want to become that mecca? And that's what happens, right? If we're the only one that offers something nobody else does, guess what? We're very attractive, that you get what you ask for. So just from that way, I'd prefer Milton to keep a hard stance at 50/50. Everything else has to go before council and, prove a hardship or whatever variance. I don't think, I don't know if the administrative variances come before a public forum at all. The concern is that a lot of stuff can just be done without the public ever knowing that.
Okay, Laura. And then
Yeah, and just a quick point is that this is for all of Milton. So when you're thinking about the Birmingham Crossroads, and, it's pretty tight in there. So an administrative variance, all of a sudden you have a brewery or something of that nature that's open till 2 a.m. That's a concern. We also have a huge, the Deerfield corridor, Highway 9, is going to be redeveloped. So I think it's important that as that occurs, that the transparency of, how many of these not 50/50 establishments will be allowed. And I think that, public notification, the public weighing in is exactly what people that live here expect.
Sure. Before Paul, can I ask you a question? Because you mentioned the 2 o'clock. Did we kind of squelch that?
Well, with comment to specifically the Birmingham Crossroads area, in the current iteration that is before you for first presentation this evening, only full-service restaurants would be allowed up there. They are still allowed to be open until 2 a.m., like any other full-service restaurant. They do have the eating at the 50%, so that's your classic 50/50. At this time, in the current proposal before you, brew pubs, breweries, the general retail that we're considering proposing to you are not in C1 or MIX. So they wouldn't be authorized in the Birmingham Crossroads area should you choose to approve RZ 14 as it's currently before you. RZ 21-14. But so the 2 a.m. would just be with the full service restaurants, and you did change the hours for the limited service. So anyone that doesn't meet 50/50, yes, Mayor, you would have to close, I believe, 11 or midnight. I'll forget that.
Okay, all right, because I know that was a concern. Jan, did you want to, Laura, did you have no question? Let me let Paul and then Jan.
Actually, let Jen go first. I'm
Okay.
really interested in hearing the planning
Jan, and then
commission.
we've got Carol.
You know, when we went over this, I guess what I went back to was when we did the long-term plan, alcohol wasn't mentioned at all. And to me, it seems like we're making alcohol a bigger issue than I think it should be. From the standpoint of what everybody that was working on the long-term plan for Milton wanted to see. And I wonder, I understand what Joe said about, trying new things and getting things, but if you're stuck with the 50/50, maybe we get new and unique things, but they weren't related to alcohol. And we don't know what that would be as times are changing and things are going on, but I just didn't see any of that. Nobody during the long-term plan said, you know what, we need to do more with alcohol. It was more about keeping Milton. And I don't know what that could mean in downtown, either here or over in Deerfield. But I don't think competing with Alpharetta is what we really want anyway. We want to be Milton. And I think being different doesn't necessarily mean you change from 50/50. It means you look for other opportunities.
Paul?
Thanks, Joe. Actually, Jan, you made part of the point that I was going to go down, and that was in the comprehensive plan discussion that we had, alcohol was not a key topic. And when I think about when is the right time to look at something different, I think more often we look at something different when something's not working, not necessarily just for the sake of change. And just as recently as this Saturday night, I drove through downtown Alpharetta, probably about 9:30, 9:45, and it was thriving. It was a vibrant community with people on the street walking and congregating, and the restaurants appeared to be busy. And I thought, boy, here's a successful execution of what their vision was of what the downtown vitality was going to look like. And I thought, do I, in my role coming up for tonight's meeting, want to do something different than that would take us down a path that, in the constituents that have engaged me on this, they're very outspoken, very passionate about. They don't want bars, and we have said forever we don't want bars in Milton. And I think although our 70-30 number is not by the definition of a bar, we're darn close to it. And so I'm inclined to say different is not necessarily better, and that before we go looking for something different, let's see what the routine, what the community is sort of expecting from us can get. And I think with what the interest has shown to date, we're getting some interest in 50/50, that we should let that work. And then if it's not working, we assess something different. So I'm inclined to take the more conservative approach and hang with the 50/50, and the other go by the way of what we've looked at it in the past.
Carol?
So I tend to lean towards the 50/50, just a conservative stance, because having lived here a long time, I think that there is a rural heritage to carry forward. It is a more seated environment, family oriented, and I think you can't go wrong with that, right? But I am a process person in some regards, and the fact that we already have process and people can bring their ideas forth, and they can meet with the city manager and they can meet with you at a first stop. What's not to like about that? So I really don't think we have anything to lose if we keep that as our basis. And then we have citizenry who, I don't mean to call you that, are people who are very interested, who probably know more about this than I do, that can weigh in. Because if things change over time and they have a different vision for what Milton ought to be, then it can change by the people. And I think that's great.
Let me ask a question. Tammy, do we have any public comment on this?
We do.
Okay,
We have.
if you guys are okay, let's, I'm going to hear public comment, and then we'll finish our discussion.
So the first one, Mayor, is, I will read it into the record. It was an email that was received today from Andrea Nugent. She resides at 14365 Wyndham Farms in Milton. I'm writing in strong opposition to the 70/30 alcohol to food municipal code. We choose Milton because it's a safe, serene, and quiet. We do not want to change that. We are concerned that if this emphasis changes to allow higher alcohol to food ratios, the quality of our community will deteriorate, just like Buckhead has. We don't need drunk drivers on our roads at night. The roads are dark and dangerous enough as it is. An Uber in Milton late at night is extremely expensive, and I do not anticipate those leaving the bar to be responsible enough to forego driving home. The demographics in Milton just do not support the bar scene. Most residents here are families or empty nesters. The other issue facing our community is that we do not have the workforce in Milton to staff those businesses. When I fear we would become standard fare, they don't succeed and we will be left with eyesores. Macy's would be the closest example of the type of establishment that I fear would become standard fare should the 70/30 code be upheld. Milton residents currently have plenty of choices nearby should they want to go to a bar. Downtown Roswell, Alpharetta, Avalon, and Halcyon are just a few minutes away. Any revenue that would be gained by allowing more bars in the city would be quickly offset by lower property values. Milton has never been a bar-friendly city. Let's not change that now. I would now then, Mayor, like to invite Alex Brennan to the podium, please.
Good evening. Alex Brennan, 5390 Silver Hill Trail, Stone Mountain, Georgia. I am here on behalf of clients of mine who are one of the folks that Bernadette mentioned, hoping to bring a brewery into the city of Milton. And I first off want to thank Planning Commission and Council for the service and the time to speak. I'm actually the chairman of the Planning Commission in Stone Mountain, so I know what a hard job you guys have. I do think that it bears making a distinction that the 50/50 rule historically has been related to distilled spirits, which breweries are not allowed to produce and sell on site without a distilled spirits permit. I think that does create kind of a line of demarcation between what's being classified as a bar and what's being classified as another sort of manufacturing and retail use. So I know you guys have mentioned Alpharetta many times and the fact that they have maintained their 50/50 ratio and thrived. They do have a brewery in the middle of downtown Alpharetta that is not subject to the 50/50 requirement. They do serve food on premise, but they are not by law required to have that ratio. So I would ask for consideration that as it relates to brew, and I should also make the distinction, breweries and brew pubs are basically full service restaurants that make beer on site. They are subject to the 50/50 requirement. They're also allowed to have distilled spirits by the drink. But I would ask for consideration that a class, however it gets done, that a process be enabled that would permit breweries to apply for a manufacturer's and on-premise consumption permit without having to have the 50/50 ratio. I think that is one of those unique scenarios where the state, which has been very strict in their 50/50 guidance as it relates to distilled spirits, when they rewrote the law in 2018 for breweries to allow them to sell directly, they did not impose that 50/50 threshold.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Tammy, please call the next speaker.
I would next like to invite Ms. Judy Birds to the podium.
Judy Birds, 1165 Bream Drive, Milton, Georgia. Watching the updates and revisions to Chapter 4 and even more revisions is about as head-spinning as deciphering the proposed changes that are sprinkled throughout the Muni Code. You'll recall that the Chapter 4 rewrite was spurred by a local wine shop who wished to provide samples, a highly popular offer in a nearby Roswell. As I look through the proposed revisions, it appears this will be eliminated in its entirety. Interestingly, breweries are allowed to serve beer without serving food. However, a farm winery who might want to open a tasting room in our area would not be allowed based on the current rewrite. There are similarly no restrictions for BYOB licenses to serve food, another glaring inconsistency. In the original revision, the discussion for 70/30 noted that for a person to order a $10 hamburger and a $12 glass of wine would make it difficult to meet the 50/50 threshold. I would posit that perhaps a 60/40 ratio in Crabapple and Deerfield with a 50/50 ratio elsewhere would be more reasonable, as well as some consistencies regarding breweries and wine tastings. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. I want to ask staff, and it can be either Steve, Ken, or Bernadette. Speaking of the breweries, state law that supersedes our ordinance, doesn't it? Can we?
Well, I just want to clarify that there are many different types of establishments that we currently allow. And we do allow the manufacturing, which would include the brew pubs and breweries. And in the breweries, they would not have to meet the food threshold. They also would not be able to serve on Sundays due to that. And they would have to close at different hours due to that. So we have some qualifications and other rules for those establishments that we do allow that don't meet the 50/50. So that's correct. We do allow them. And so the way the state works, so to answer it a little more clearly, is they go by what the local jurisdiction allows. So if they do allow more and we don't, the state will abide by our choices in our ordinance, as it's a locally run preference state. I'm not sure if that's the correct word, and Ken can correct me if that's wrong, but that's how it works here. So they allow a big umbrella, we can tailor it in, and they would abide by what we tailored it into.
Just a comment, because I looked into this too, and maybe there's a discrepancy, but on the Jekyll Brewing in downtown Alpharetta, it was my understanding that that is 50/50 because they are open they also have the tap room, which is on Marconian, which is the manufacturing, which is they close, they don't stay open any later than 9. So if we could get clarification on that, that would be helpful.
I can clarify that in downtown Alpharetta, typically 50/50 is required. They do allow other ratios other places, but they do have a caveat called tap and truck, which is where you can have an establishment that sells alcohol only team up with food trucks that come on site to make up their food ratio. So there's a lot of nuances in that tap and truck category.
There's one. And there's one.
They
in
do allow that
Alpharetta.
though downtown. And then they do allow cigar shops to have alcohol with no food. But 70% of their revenues have to come from the sale of cigars, not alcohol. So we've talked about maybe having some rules like that, talking about the ratios of revenue requirements. And they do have wine bars. I believe their wine bars are 60/40 is what our research found out. And I'm told that they're not allowed right in the downtown, but they are allowed in Alpharetta.
Okay. Anybody else? Rick and then Joe.
I guess I tend to go more, the 50/50 seems to work in all the areas around us. I'm open to seeing things come forward, go through a formal process so that the public gets to actually weigh in, Plan Commission gets to review it, and then council actually has some say. I'd be concerned if we started to do by right with higher percentage of alcohol, because it is an exception from what we've done. So I think we're open to looking at different things, but I think it's better that we actually have a chance to review them and have the public be able to see it and have comment also.
Joe?
Bernadette, do you have, this is going to be an impossible question to ask, answer, but I'm going to give it a try. What makes 50/50 magical?
They determined that an event would be considered if they were 50/50, and those are the establishments in which a lot of their rules are based upon, including Sunday sales and things like that.
So the 50/50 rule is how you qualify to be a restaurant.
In a full service restaurant.
Right.
Right.
Okay. One of the things that we're seeing nowadays is this sort of burgeoning craft, custom, high-end well, basically of everything, but certainly in the alcohol business. I mean, the craft brewery, the micro distilleries, all of those things have come out of a desire to sell a higher quality product at a higher price. In other words, I might be able to get a bottle of bourbon at the liquor store for, $9 for 750 milliliters. But if I were to buy the same kind of product from a micro distillery downtown, it could cost me 5 times that. So the same thing is happening inside our restaurants. Our restaurants are selling these high-end cocktails that instead of being a $4 bourbon and Coke, it's a $15, some kind of strange Manhattan concoction or old-fashioned concoction, right? And so the mathematics to me are getting all jumbled up in this whole 50-50 analysis. I certainly see where we want to make sure restaurants are easily defined as restaurants, but we certainly are giving establishments a need to work around the rules. And that's where I start getting worried about this, is that in order for somebody to qualify for this 50-50 thing, I've heard lots of strange things taking place where, not because they're trying to scam the system or anything else, they're making sure every piece of food gets counted. If they put a basket of chips on the table, it's not free. The customer not paid for it, but they're making sure that that kind of stuff gets allocated, let's say. So is there any example where we can take that kind of thing into consideration? Do we have any? Well, I guess that's a moot point, because what you're saying is the state's definition of 50-50 for a full service restaurant is where the 50-50 number came from. And so if we divert from that, what we're really doing is we're establishing some kind of a norm for something else.
We would just be establishing here locally that they couldn't serve on Sundays, and they may have other rules as council puts out. So going back kind of to that main question, I guess the first thing we need to really answer is, I've heard maybe half and half, almost maybe 70-30, that are you okay with things other than 50-50 is kind of that first. I know we can get then to how do we approve them, right? That's kind of the second question. We started in on it a little bit. But I think first, it'd be easiest to understand for staff if you, as a council body, are okay with less than 50-50 in general. And then we can kind of get into how do we shape making that in the vision of Milton and how we authorize those. Is that okay?
Oh, it is. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And, making the state figure out something new, something more modern, and something more applicable to what's going on in the marketplace is going to be a very difficult task.
We
So
can do it. We just can't do it on Sundays, and we may have other rules. But the state's saying you can do less than 50-50. You're just not considered full service, which is typically that Sunday sales category.
right. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a recommendation?
Sure.
Just something to think about. So we're talking about two different elements here. There's the land use element and zoning. Then there's the alcohol code permitting. Each of them do different things. Each of them have objectives. So it sounds to me like, and based upon the feedback I've heard, and of course council may want to do something altogether different, but what I'm hearing is you want to start in your zoning code. You want to start with the land use element, something like, something up, but a zoning designation called a less than full service restaurant zoning designation. You don't even define what that is, but it's a cup. And I don't want a warrant. I want a cup, because the cup comes to you. A cup has to have sort of your legislative discretion. You got to go through all of the various procedural protocols. And so let's assume that you like that for a particular location and you grant them that zoning designation. Then they have to go get their permit, the alcohol code permit, for what that looks like. And of course, the iteration of the alcohol code you have in place allows for a ratio that's less than 50-50. And that's great, because that's why it's called a less than full service restaurant zoning designation. My point simply is the two have to go hand in hand. The Zoning designation gets you the land use permission to be able to locate the establishment there. The alcohol permit then provides the regulatory teeth to actually allow the sale of alcohol. And you all will remember from somewhat recent experience that alcohol license can, of course, be adjusted as well on an annual basis. And so in 2022, a less than full service restaurant percentage may look different than it will in 2021 or 2023 because you maintain the right to affect your code on what that looks like. Two-step process. One provides the zoning transparency wing. The other is your regulatory alcohol allowance.
Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess the concern I'd have if we do something, we allow something with a higher percentage of alcohol by right without a review, we don't know what we're getting. We don't know what type of businesses those are. We're not saying that we're opposed to potential new business models, but I think we want to see it and review. And like Laura had mentioned over at Highway 9, that's prime real estate for redevelopment coming in the future. Then there's other places that actually expanded development in some of the places, the Fry's, and then to the north, even of the Target area. So I think that's kind of where I'm not opposed to saying, well, we can only have restaurants. I think we're open to looking at things, but I want to see what they are before we just go ahead and say, well, let's change the code and allow it and not have a say in it. That would be my concern, is then we're not really looking at what those businesses are, what's the content, how it works. The other question, a couple of questions, the reviews of the revenue percentages, is that something that staff does on a regular basis for all businesses that have alcohol licenses?
So I would like to just address your first comment, if you wouldn't mind, initially. So under the two different options, currently we don't have by right as an option. So that's a good thing to go along with what you're saying. We would just be deciding if it would be the administrative approval or the council issued approval. So we can get to that. So I believe you're saying you would like council approval.
Yes.
Just to clarify. Thank you. And then, so as far as the annual is how we collect the food and beverage sales affidavit that we turn out with their alcohol license renewal application, as well as the new one. Those who do sell distilled spirits by the drink do have to also monthly turn in their excise tax forms, which also asks for those ratios. But it is annually that we ask for that.
Okay,
We're reviewing it actually currently right now to issue 2022 licenses.
Okay, so we are actually, that's how we get the data. And in some cases, it would be monthly. They're turning that into the city.
Right, we could review some of the distilled spirits types locations on a monthly basis. And again, that kind of goes back to your restaurants are the only ones that would be allowed to have distilled spirits. You wouldn't be having distilled spirits at these other concepts that we've been talking about because there's a couple of things that go into that. So, but yes, sir, we can look at the distilled spirits locations monthly for consumption on premise, and then everyone else annually is what we currently do. We have the right at any time to audit per the ordinance. So we could call and give them, it's maybe a month or two to get their books in order to bring them over to us. But they're supposed to be keeping those books for several years, and we can ask them at any time.
Okay.
And
Paul, sorry.
Just one, I guess to branch off from that, what type do you see? Are most of them close to 50-50? I mean, is there any type of a trend you see with the business establishments we have?
We're going through them right now, and it appears that we don't have many that are outside of that, and our legal is looking at any that may, to make sure that there is no exceptions for any that don't qualify.
Okay.
I'd say most of the ratios for the restaurants are like 80-20.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Paul?
A question for Bernadette. Bernadette, in the instance of the manufacturer, what is the food requirement for them?
So let's go back to state law made an exception for manufacturers. It was more recent than some of the older stuff we're talking about. And they are in their 3-tiered system. They are allowed to do all of them, which is a unique concept to them, which is distribute consumption on premise and retail sales, and making manufacturing. And so a brewery itself doesn't have to have any food to do any of those things. A brew pub, which you may hear referred to, would have to also qualify as an eating establishment. So they'd be a restaurant that also happens to brew their own beverages on site.
So in the instance that was presented to us a while ago in the concepts that we're contemplating Crabapple, the brewery, which I also think has a micro distillery in it, is not required to have any food. But weren't they also working to engage a restaurant in partnership to be providing a food resource to them?
Yes, sir. And let me be clear that they can only sell their own. So I didn't want to make sure that everyone understands. It's not like they can open up as many alcohol types as a restaurant or some other establishment would have. So they can only have their own. They can't bring in other types without the food component. And ours is looking into currently in their location to have a restaurant serving food on site as well. Our current applicant.
So to date, that's the only one that we have like that for Crabapple?
Correct. And we've been discussing some things with some other applicants, but don't have anything in the
Nothing in
office as
process.
a formal application at this time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just, so now to comment based on your answers, I think in the fact that there are some paths like that that are already accommodated by our code, that the process is potentially going to work by doing that, because there's a process for review either by staff and or council through the existing paths. It's not broken, and we haven't really tested it yet. So I would be in favor of saying, let's see how it works before we introduce a new path and other concepts that aren't necessarily something that the community is after. There may be a component that's interested in it, but certainly the impression I've got from those who have engaged with me, they're very passionate about being opposed to anything other than 50-50.
Can we go back and just, I'm hearing everybody's comments and there's some differences, but I would venture to say that if we stayed with the standard of the 50-50, but anything else came back as a use permit, not as a warrant or not as a staff-driven thing, but that it came back to council and the citizens, I venture to say that probably would appease everybody. Maybe a little tougher than some would like, and a little, not as tough as others. But and I'm looking at planning commission too. Would in general, would you guys be good with that? And council, it sounds like that's somewhere kind of in the middle there, where we're not blocking everything out, but you're not giving a rubber stamp to anything either. So if, again, like I said, first thing, if there's something that's good and would benefit the quality of life for our citizens, and our citizens are on board with it, and an applicant brings something quality, then certainly, obviously, some of us won't be here, but we're going to need something to do on Monday night, so you guys can have some meetings we can watch.
So Mayor,
But-
just to understand, so there'd be more like the event facilities where every time someone came in and
Yeah.
applied and didn't meet this normal threshold, there's a standard threshold, we would just bring them before council, go through set the conditions that are standard if they want, and then obviously you guys would have the right to adjust those.
And let me add too, it's not, Milton's only, what do we have, about 15% of our property is commercial, so it's not rampant. And again, it would probably, as things mature and get, it would peter out pretty quick. It's not, I doubt we're gonna have a ton of applications. So if council's okay with that and planning commission, does that give you guys some direction, or Bernadette, I know Robin had something.
Absolutely. We will go back to that. I believe Ken would have to tell us what to do with tonight's first presentation, since that would take some editing. And then the only other question I would have for us to continue is, would you like that across all currently allowed zoning districts, or would that only be in the two form-based code areas?
Okay, so that's another discussion.
It is.
I hope not a long one.
My recommendation would be that you use that across all zoning.
Yes.
There's no reason
Make it a
not
lot
to
of
differentiate between the two.
conversation.
And from a staff perspective, if you're all in agreement, you've answered the two questions that we
Yes.
needed
Mhm.
answered tonight.
Yep.
And which brings it back down to Bernadette's last question regarding the current first read that's on for tonight, because that was contemplating an administrative variance warrant procedure. We're moving towards a use permit procedure to bring back before you. I guess I'll turn it over to Ken.
Yeah, that's a close question. Typically, the more substantive the potential change, the more likely we have to start the process or do it over again with another first presentation. It's kind of controlled by your charter. The charter wants something that looks a little bit like what you're going to approve to be the product of a first presentation, followed by then the public hearing. So given that we're moving away from a warrant more to a cup, I'm probably going to request staff to do the first.
Okay, and let me just real quick to get kind of a feedback from the planning commission when we're talking about across all of our different areas, not just the form-based code areas. Are you guys good with that too? Have the same set of rules? Okay, and I think council was good with that, right? Okay.
To
if I may, if we go back to the way there are permitted right now 70/30.
All of those would now have to come before council in a use permit scenario, be approved through that, then also meet the requirements of the alcohol licensing chapter, and then have to come before them for that approval as well. So it'd be a dual council approval for anything that doesn't meet the 50/50.
The other point that we need to do also, and I think Steve talked about it at our meeting, that the definitions that we presently have need to be refined.
Currently, we went back and made them match Chapter 4. We've talked with our city attorney's office a lot about how some of the information in the definitions are very specific to licensing in Chapter 4. So we are reviewing with the city attorney's office whether we should just say the same as Chapter 4. So they are consistent and mean the same thing across each boundary.
But
So,
we'd have to go back to Chapter 4.
so and in order to,
I say we.
right.
Somebody.
But the way the newest packet that is in the council's possession in tonight's meeting did clean up some of the language according to alcohol permitting and licensing and removed those pieces of it. The rest of it does match Chapter 4 at this time.
You good, Fred?
No.
No, not good with that. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Do we have a third question?
No.
No,
We're good
You've
there.
given us everything that we needed from a staff perspective. If there's anything else that the planning commission or council wants to discuss on this matter, or
Okay. Well, thank you for the community feedback as well as big thanks to our planning commission for all the work you guys have done. And we appreciate you guys getting together with us too, because sometimes it's good to be able to look each other in the eye and discuss this stuff openly, publicly. So come to a good direction, hopefully. So, okay. All right.
Mayor, I have your.
All right. So let's see. Do we have any other public comments on our work session?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay. And any other council discussion? Do we need an executive session?
do not.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the work session tonight. Thank you guys for being here, and you guys are welcome to stay here and keep your seats warm too for the rest of our meeting. So before we get started here with our meeting, I'd like to ask Father Reggie, I think is here to lead us in our invocation.
Good evening. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come again to give you thanks for this opportunity to gather in your name. We ask that you would forgive us of our sins, known and unknown. Pray, Lord, that you would allow your Spirit to guide and direct this body to the fulfillment of your purpose through all that they decide and enact for the greater good of your people. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Father. Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, December 6th, 2021 to order. The city strongly recommends that you review tonight's agenda carefully, and if you wish to speak on any item on the agenda, then please bring your comment cards to the clerk as soon as possible. While Milton rules allow a speaker to turn in their comment card up until the clerk calls that agenda item. Once the agenda item is called, no more comment cards can be accepted. Will the city clerk please call roll and make general announcements?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the December 6, 2021 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to make a public comment, you are required to complete the public comment card prior to speaking on the item. Your comment card must be presented to the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. All speakers, please identify yourself by name, address, and organization before beginning your comment. If you are representing an organization, an affidavit is required stating you have the authority to speak on behalf of that organization. Please review tonight's agenda, and if you would like to make a comment, please bring your comment card to me now. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited. Please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outburst, or dialogue with any person speaking. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Peyton Jamison.
Here.
Councilmember Paul Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Laura Bentley. Here. Councilmember Carol Cookerly. Here. Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
And Councilmember Rick Morrig.
Here.
Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Before we get started, I want to say a couple words. As most of you guys, I'm sure, have heard, there was a tragic accident the other day on Freemanville Road where a young man, teenager, lost his life. And just want to let you know that let the people that are affected, the families, that we're all grieving here in Milton. They're part of our family. Young man by the name of Grayson. I just want to lift up his mom. She works in our community. His dad coached some of our residents and our friends and their classmates. It was Clay, Ben, and Betsy who were on the scene of the accident and risked their life trying to help pull the young man from the wreckage. Want to give a thanks to our first responders, those that were there. And then there was also Smith and David who were injured in the accident. We certainly want to lift them up and their families and hope for a full recovery. So just want to kind of think about those folks and let them know that we're all grieving for them. Okay, if the city clerk would please call the first item.
Thank you, Mayor. That first item is approval of the meeting agenda. It's agenda item number 21345. Mayor Lockwood.
Okay. Is there anything on the agenda that anyone wants to add or change? Okay, I'll open up for a motion on the agenda.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a meeting for approval of the agenda from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Cookerly. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, do we have any general public comment?
We do not have any general public comment
Okay,
that I'm
all
aware
right.
of, sir.
I'll move on then and move on to the consent agenda. Tammy, if you'll please read those items.
Thank you, Mayor. That first item A is approval of November 15th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. It's agenda item number 21346. Item B is approval of a goods and services contract with Galls LLC for uniform and related items for the police department. It's agenda item number 21347. Item C is approval of a change order number 2 between the City of Milton and CPS HR Consulting, extending professional services agreement for the completion of the employee engagement survey until June 30th of 2022. It's agenda item number 21348. Item D, approval of a change order number 1 between the City of Milton and American Facility Services, Inc. to provide janitorial services for the clubhouse at the former Milton Country Club. Agenda item number 21349. Item E is approval of a change order number 1 between the City of Milton and Triscapes, Inc. for trash services and lake dam inspections at the Lackey Road Green Space. Agenda item number 2121350. Item F, approval of a task order number 1 with KCI Technologies, Inc. to provide City T-Splosh Batch 3 design services for Bethany Road at Providence Road intersection improvement project. Agenda item number 21351. G is approval of subdivision plat and revision. The name of the location, the development is plat for Jake Bailey. It's at 16455 Birmingham Highway, land lot 238, District 2, Section 2. It is a minor plat to transfer 0.35 acres from 16455 Birmingham Road, Track 1, to the adjacent southern parcel, Track 2, to create a 1 acre lot track. It's a total of 4.12 acres with a density of 0.48 lots per acre. Agenda item number 21352. Item F is approval of a construction services agreement with Gracie Gray Contractors, Inc. for Clarity Bridge repair. It's agenda item number 21353. Mayor Lockwood.
Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move we accept the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Moore with a second from Councilmember Morrig. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to reports and presentations. If you please call the first item.
Mayor, that item is presentation of the North Building demolition proposal at the Cox Road Athletic Complex. It's presented tonight by Parks and Rec Manager, Mr. Tom McElveen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. All right. What I have this evening is a presentation on Cox Road and specifically what to do with the building located furthest north on the property. So as part of this quick presentation, I'll talk about the current state of Cox Road, what the buildings that are on the site are used for, what the northern buildings conditions are currently, the options for that north building that we have, and then our recommendations as staff, what we should do with it. So as you can see on this, this aerial shot on the right, this is the Cox Road Athletic Complex on the right here. The south building here hosts the public restrooms. It has garage or the storage here for all the equipment that the landscape contractors use. And then it's got an office and like another room that's for storage. There's also, the parking lots and the Porter Academy next door. We do utilize an agreement with the Porter Academy when they're out of school that we can use their parking lot for overflow parking, which is utilized on busier days. And the fields that we will be renovating that are upcoming as well. Now, staff would recommend that overall parking, if we could get to at least 90, that would help accommodate the usage that we're going to be anticipating having. And that's even on the low end. I'm going to have a slideshow of some pictures just to show you the status of both. This is the building we propose we keep. It's it's utilized a lot. Right here, can you see my mouse? Yeah, this is the door to the restrooms. My next slide will have the restrooms. We got our first aid kit, and there's the lightning detection system right here that the siren that goes off when there's lightning detected. It went off today. Here is a picture of the restrooms. While they're not new, they are very, very utilizable, and they're very clean. So, at this time, the restrooms are good to go. Here's a few shots of the interior of the building as well. This is the maintenance garage, plenty of space to store what's needed for the facility in there. It even fits another really large reel mower in there as well. Here's the office. It utilizes this computer right here is the hub for the whole park. We connect into that computer for lights to schedule the lights to go on and off on the fields. And it's also the hub that runs the weather station on the roof for our tornado detection. And it's got the Wi-Fi built into it as well. And our contractors, Triscapes, have set up their own little desk here. And then this This photo on the right is just a big room that I believe was just used for meeting space from the previous owners. It's rather large, and we just use it for storage. But here's what we came to talk about, and this is the north building. Let me get to the right page here. Hold on. During the due diligence period, when the property was acquired, this building was deemed not really utilizable for any reason. The amount of work it needs to get it back up to being able to operate out of it is going to be rather expensive. And as you see, as we go through the pictures here, there's a lot of unknowns as well in the basement too. Nobody utilizes this space right now. It's got a couple things inside of it that we've just put in there because we're not going to be using it, but the power's disconnected, the plumbing's failed essentially. The upstairs is about 1,800 square feet, and there is a basement that is another probably 1,800 square feet. All the windows and doors are either broken or need replaced on this building. But the one, as you probably can tell in the picture, the one part of the building that is in good shape is the roof. I would estimate the roof to be probably within eight years old. So it's probably the only thing that's really in good shape on the whole building. Here's a picture of the rear of the building. As you can see, this structure here is, I don't know why, but the posts were cut off. And there's some broken windows here on this picture. Here's what the inside looks like. It appears that there was an attempt to renovate, and they kind of stopped very early on. The flooring would have to be replaced. The electrical and lighting is very outdated and old. And the restrooms, as you can see, are in disrepair. There's a small little kitchenette also. I basically had turned around from that first picture, and that's what it's looking like now. And then there's the basement. When you go down there, it smells musky, and I would not be shocked if there's mold. If the decision were to be to move forward with keeping the building, that would probably be the first step, is to evaluate the status of the basement. There's showers. It was intended to be a locker room for a semi-pro soccer team. So there's 2 locker rooms and showers and storage down there. At one time, it probably was very functional, not so much anymore. So if we went with the demolition recommended, here, thanks to Ms. Sarah Leaders, appreciate it. Here are what we could work with here. As you see in the yellow here, there's no parking in this area, mainly because of how close it is to the building. So if the building were removed, we could add a bunch of spots here and along the north side of the south building here as well. So we have 3 options. We can leave the building as it is and not do anything. We could renovate the building to potentially accommodate recreation programming and potentially maybe rentals, or we can demo the building. On the renovation side, when we're looking at potentially keeping it, we have Community Place right here that's 2 miles away that we already do utilize for our programming. And it's a very similar size to Bethwell Community Center, I would say. And the amount of programming that is going to end up going into Bethwell once the former Milton Country Club is completed is going to be rather minimal. It'll probably turn into more of a rental space more than anything else. If we went with the demo, we would be able to remove a building that would really have very little utilization. And we could increase parking on site at Cox Road by probably more than 20%, really. I think we could easily get 15 to 18 more spots. And that's a big deal. That's hosting a whole nother team while you're at practice or a game. The estimated cost to do the demolition would be between $30,000 and $35,000, and that would also include, and baked into that price is, throwing down milled asphalt to make the parking there as well. Renovation costs, I don't have a real accurate number because I don't know what we're dealing with, especially down in the basement, but I could see it easily exceeding $100,000. And that's all I have right now. Do you have any questions?
Any questions, Tom, Rick?
The estimated cost, Tom, does that include, you said it would be demo, but it would also be backfilling that whole basement area?
You got it.
And then doing the tar?
Yes, sir.
Tar parking lot?
Striping?
Yes. Well, it would be painted just like the rest of the parking lot. The asphalt is almost like a gravel. And so we spray the parking lot about every month. We give them fresh lines.
Tom, is there, would you extract the basement or just be filling it in?
Fill it in.
Fill it in.
Yeah.
And then what's the situation? Is it, I'm assuming it's on septic.
It is.
And
Yeah,
so
but the septic wouldn't be.
is there any
it's-
mitigation for that?
Not that I have not prepared anything for the septic, but the tank is right here, and we'll pull it up. Actually, you can see the lid for it's right here.
We're not seeing your screen.
Oh, let me get the presentation back up.
I don't have to see it if you've contemplated that, that's good enough. Is there any abatement issue with old materials, asbestos or anything else that we have to pay attention to?
That would be the first step, is have an asbestos test done prior to going out to bid for the demolition.
So it's possible the demo cost could go up? At 30 to
Possible,
30?
yes, but when this building was constructed, it was in the late 80s.
Okay.
So I don't think we'll run into that issue.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions, thoughts, recommendations? You guys good with staff recommendations?
Go with the demo.
The demo.
Yeah, demo.
I'm okay with that too, but just, sometimes it seems weird when parking's more important than a building to us, to our society. But I totally get it. The use there, that we purchased that park for is not for the building, it's for the fields and the teams and that use, so.
There are a lot of fields on not a lot of property there.
Okay, yeah. All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, move on to our first presentations. If our clerk could please call those out.
Mayor, those items are consideration of a text amendment, RZ 2109, to create a new use permit, farm wineries, Section 64-1845. It's agenda item number 21354. Item B is consideration of a text amendment, RZ 2110, to Section 64-1121, allowed use chart to amend the use chart as it relates to farm wineries. Agenda item number 21355. Item C is consideration of a text amendment, RZ 2111, to Section 64-1 definitions related to farm wineries. It's agenda item number 21356. Item D is consideration of a text amendment, RZ 2114, to Chapter 64 related to business license to serve and sell alcohol as required in Chapter 4 alcoholic beverages. Agenda item number 21357. Item E, consideration of a text amendment, RZ 2108, to Chapter 64, Article 4, Division 23 CUP Community Unit Plan to amend or delete the CUP zoning district. Item F is consideration of a text amendment, RZ 2112, to Chapter 64 to Article 6, Division 2, AG1 Agriculture to allow certain structures housing animals to conform to the AG1 district minimum yards. Agenda item number 21359. Item G is consideration of a text amendment, RZ 2113, to delete Section 641596, Event Special Indoor Outdoor. Agenda item number 21360. Item F, consideration of an ordinance amending the Milton Code, Chapter 20, Environment, and Chapter 60, Tree Canopy Conservation, to require predetermination by the Community Development Director regarding applicability of certain exceptions and exemptions to specified city permitting requirements. Agenda item number 21361. Item I is consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 20 of the Milton Stormwater Management Ordinance. Agenda item number 21362. Mayor, we do have public comment on these, on the first presentation as well.
Okay. I'm okay. Is that okay? Public comment on the first presentation.
Check, Mr. Mayor, just to make sure.
Just want to make sure I'm always open to public comment, but just want to make sure we're covered here. Don't know that I've ever had that question before, so. Of course, being my next to last meeting in 15 years, I had to have something thrown at me that.
Right, so there is no provision that allows public comment during the items on first presentation. It is anticipated that that will be done during the general public comment. That's where that's anticipated.
Can council agree to allow that comment?
No concern if council agrees with it.
Okay, is council okay with allowing this comment? Just, in the future, we'll make sure it's under general, we'll consider this general comment.
We had changed the rule. We actually were thinking that we, at some time past, not allowing public comment on first presentation at all. And then we did modify it to allow it during the general public comment. So if the council wants to do that now, that is a reasonable accommodation.
Do I need anything formally?
Like a motion, second, and a vote to allow that.
Okay, do I have a motion to allow this comment that we can consider general comment on first presentation?
Second.
Okay, who was the first? Was Joe? All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Morrig. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay,
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to first invite Mr. Tim Becker to the podium, please.
Tim Becker, 97 Canton Street, Alpharetta, Georgia. Before I start, I just wanted to remind council that I was a resident of Alpharetta or Milton for 28 years, and I have a deep fondness for the city. I wanted to speak to the text amendments around farm wineries. And I guess my first question is, why is this on the agenda? Why don't we wait a month? This is a controversial issue. We have 3 lame duck, for lack of a better word, council members. So, why not let it go to the next council? And I guess my hypothesis on this is that maybe this is personal for certain council members. And that's unfortunate because there's, we have to quit playing politics in Milton at some point, especially politics that's not based on policy or principles, but politics that's based on personality. What I wanted to do tonight is, there was in 2018, and council knows that I have a hard spot with the approval of Matilda's. And so when I look at what we're trying to do relative to farm wineries and Matilda's, it just doesn't make sense at all as a point of reference. And, I even heard tonight some references about people who are over the limit, who are driving on our dark and winding roads. Same argument was made for Matilda's. So there seems to be, I want to talk to the hypocrisy and what I believe to be a pretty shocking double standard. So let's talk about parking, for example. With Matilda's, there was no standards for parking. The applicant came in, he had a ridiculous looking parking plan. Staff said, yes, you can park all the cars there. And within 2 months, the applicant was going to Georgia Power to get permission to build parking under the power lines. He never got permission. He said he got permission. The city repeated that lie, but he never got permission for that. And he never got permission from the city to build the north parking. So what we saw at Matilda's is he laid down gravel, never came to the city to ask to do that. That was in the south parking lot. Did the same thing for the north parking lot, which wasn't part of the site plan. So we had to come back for a variance. We all remember this. Was not even scolded for doing that. Granted another variance. 12 variances were used to bastardize a special use permit. We do not have a special use permit in Milton for music venues. We don't. What's the purpose of having a list of special uses, and we have a long list, if we're going to let somebody come in and take a festival permit or whatever and bastardize it with a bunch of variances? That means you can get away with anything in Milton. You can build a skyscraper with enough variances. We've got to stop granting variances. Now, I'm not advocating for the painted horse. I'm not advocating for farm wineries, but there is an issue of fairness. And that's the problem here. Because with this farm winery, we're saying the parking has to be 100 feet away from the property line. Well, with Matilda's, you allowed 10 feet from the property line because you eliminated all of the buffers around the property. No screening. So that's a double standard, and that's the problem that I had. And some of you are good friends of mine. Good friends of mine. But you did the wrong thing, and you did it for a personal agenda. And that's wrong. You're not allowing outdoor music at a farm winery, even if it's 55 decibels at the property line, but yet with Matilda's, we allowed 75 decibels. When I lived in Milton, I could hear it 1.5 miles away. And I texted the two District 2 elected representatives and the city manager. One time, it was the first time I ever complained. I said, I can hear it at my house. It's that loud. You know what I heard? Back from those three individuals, nothing.
Time expired.
So the last thing I want to talk about the buffers. There was no need to eliminate the buffers all the way around the property.
Mr. Mayor, if you want to allow more time, I think that's in order.
I'm
but
going to
wanna
hold up.
see us follow some
I'm
protocol.
going to ask to either wrap it up or if council's okay with adding another minute.
That's good.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I'm
We're
going
good
to
add
wrap
another
it
minute.
up. But the last thing is the buffers. The buffers were eliminated around the entire property. So at Matilda's, parking within 10 feet of the property line, elimination of the buffers. Here, we're saying the parking's 100 feet away, and you have to put up screening also. Might be the right thing to do, but we can't have a double standard here in Milton. And I'm so disappointed in the people that I supported, and people know I laid it all out on the field. I left it all out on the field for one of the representatives that are sitting up here. And those variances that we granted to that applicant, they're worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we know that. So that's all I've got to say about the matter, but I certainly would like you to address the hypocrisy relative to these two venues and somehow square that with me. I'm happy to talk with you after the meeting.
Thank you. Do you have any other public
We
comment?
do, Mayor. I'd like to invite Michelle Weston to the podium.
Okay.
My name's Michelle Weston. I'm an 11-year resident of Milton. I live on East Bluff Road, and my husband and I also own a second residential property in Milton.
Ms. Weston, would you mind just stating the address just for the record.
Oh, yes, of course. I live at 14835 East Bluff Road.
Thank you.
And I wanted to speak to you tonight on the agenda item number 21357, and it is what you all were discussing earlier with the Planning Commission. I became aware recently of the proposed code change to allow establishments with a 70-30 ratio. I was very alarmed about that as a longtime resident. I'm very heartened by the discussion that I saw earlier, and so I don't want to belabor the point. I just wanted to speak in support of retaining the 50-50 ratio with the option of allowing businesses to seek a variance in an open, transparent manner, where citizens would have notice, input, and the council would vote upon it, as opposed to an administrative variance. So thank you for your conversation, discussion on it earlier. I'm very heartened by what I heard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to invite Greg Kronk to the podium.
Okay.
Evening. I'm Greg Kronk, 600 Hickory Mill Lane, Milton, Georgia. And I had a really tight little speech here, but a lot of my powder got blown away earlier tonight. But so I'll try to make this really brief. I'd like to ask the City Council to accept the unanimous recommendation of your Planning Commission and prohibit anything greater than a 50-50 restaurant. My reasons for that is I've never heard during the comprehensive plan process or anywhere else any calls by residents for bars. What I heard was a need for more great restaurants such as Milton's, 7 Acres, The Union, and Milton Tavern, all of them with a great bar program, and all of them which seem to be successful here. You may be hearing the call for bars from developers because without a doubt, establishments make a bigger margin on alcohol than food. In fact, I think that is why we're not seeing more great restaurants coming to Milton right now and filling up some of the commercial space that we have. All the potential investment money is on the sidelines waiting to see the outcome of this fight. They're thinking, why build a restaurant here if I can build a bar after a while? And this is where council must do what is best for the long term, for the city, for the citizens, and not necessarily for the developers. I truly think that once you hold up the standard of 50-50 restaurants with great bars, and I think, everybody's been to the bar at Milton's and a few other places. I think I've seen some of you folks there. You know that we can have both. We can have a great restaurant and a great bar. They're not exclusive. And I think that once we say 50-50, you'll start seeing more development coming in, or restaurant development with some more great bars. So please, let's put a stake in the heart of 70-30 once and for all. And let's get back to focusing on things that the people say that they want, like parks and rec, trails, green space, large lots, all those marvelous things that are what we think Milton is supposed to be. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
The last one for the first read is Miss Mary Kronk.
Okay.
You're invited to the podium.
I'm Mary Kronk, and I live at 600 Hickory Mill Lane in Milton. I had prepared some remarks, but based on the outcome of the joint work session that you have, I'm just going to save them in case I need them for a later time. But I did want to say that undeniably the city of Milton is a gem. You and previous council members have made sometimes very difficult decisions that created, protected, and preserved Milton. You're once again being asked to protect this unique and remarkable city. I'm very much in favor of the directives you've given to staff in allowing only 50-50 ratio, alcohol to food ratio, and requiring all applications outside of this to be put for a vote before council with full transparency and public comment. And again, thank you so very much for what you do and the careful consideration that you're making, keeping our city great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so no public comment, so we'll move on to our public hearing. If you'll please call that item.
presentation.
Yeah, Mayor, can we just finalize Ken, we didn't get a vote on first presentation
I'm sorry.
items.
Okay, well, I'll open up for a motion on first presentation.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the first presentation items.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Moore. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of order real quickly too, just to explain to the council and the gallery that, under first presentation, some of these amendments that are going to be looked at further was on there. Doesn't matter. I mean, if direction the council's given, staff will go work on that, and we need to bring it back, we'll bring it back. There's no problem one way or the other about us going ahead and doing that on first presentation.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to our
Public hearing item, yes, sir. That's consideration of the abandonment of all public rights-of-way within the Kingsley Estate subdivision. It's agenda item number 21341. Our Public Works Director, Ms. Sarah Leaders.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the first of two related items on the agenda tonight. So I'd like to do the presentation at the start of the public hearing to provide some framework for the comments that we may hear in the public hearing process. So Kingsley Estates is a 96-lot subdivision located in the north end of the city, has about 1.85 miles of roadway within the subdivision. Slide shows an overview of our abandonment process, and we are currently at the final public hearing. That's this agenda item tonight. And following this, under new business, will be consideration of a resolution to abandon the rights of way. The results of that, if denied, the process ends, and if approved, we continue with the further final documentation and then disposal of the property per state code. So to highlight the progress of those abandonment process steps, like I said, at the first public hearing, we got the initial application in September of 2018, and there was a preliminary council review and approval to accept the application on September 24th of 2018. The HOA picked back up the process this fall. They submitted supporting documentations. We set the date for the public hearings, and they mailed certified letters to anyone in the neighborhood who had not signed the petition. Did that in early October. We advertised for that first public hearing on November 11th, held the public hearing November 15th, advertised for tonight's hearing on December 2nd, and then tonight is the second public hearing. Again, like I said, later on in the agenda, under new business, will be consideration of the resolution for abandonment. So staff has done a review of the impacts of the proposed abandonment. I detailed these in the staff memo that's attached in the agenda packet. I'm just going to highlight a few of those reviews and the findings. So first looked at the roadway network. What we wanted to look for there is the connections that the subdivision street makes. Quayside Drive, as shown on the map on the right, connects Birmingham Highway, which is classified as a minor arterial road, to Freemanville Road, which that segment of Freemanville is classified as a local road. Next, we looked at transportation impacts. So did some estimates of the number of pass-through trips that are currently using Quayside Drive, and looked at those to get an estimate for daily and peak hour trips and how those would affect the rest of the transportation system. From a financial impact, we looked at the impacts to the neighborhood, which would possibly be an increase in their HOA dues, and as well as we reviewed their revenues and operating expenses. From the financial impact to the city, we looked at the benefit of savings we would have from paying for street lighting and road repairs. Based on a review of these impacts, staff supports the application for abandonment. So this applies to the new business item, the consideration that will be made if the council makes a finding that one of the following is applicable in respect to the roadway in question, whether that is that no substantial public purpose is served or that its removal from the municipal street systems in the best public interest. If the resolution is approved, these are the next steps that would be needed to formalize the abandonment. We would need a revised subdivision plat. It would need to be reviewed and approved by both the county and the city. And then the revised plat would be recorded. And at that point, we could file the deed of abandonment. And to conclude, I'd just like to show the two entrances of the Kingsley Estates subdivision. The image on the left is the Birmingham Highway entrance. And the HOA provided a survey that was done and prepared for by the HOA. And so we took that survey and color coded some of the different elements that are involved at these two entrances. So at the Birmingham entrance, the pink line represents the point where the public right-of-way of Birmingham Highway would stop and the private right-of-way of Kingsley Estates Quayside Drive would begin. So the area shaded in pink is all existing right-of-way. And then the blue is an existing public drainage easement that would then become a private drainage easement if the abandonment was approved. Image on the right is the Freemanville entrance. Again, the pink is the right-of-way that currently exists. In this particular case, there are some additional types of easements at this entrance. We have that same drainage easement that runs along Freemanville Road. And then we have a sign easement, which is shown in orange. And that is for some of the entrance features that currently exist. And the green is a landscape easement that exists at that entrance. So that concludes the items I wanted to present on prior to the public hearing. I do have some additional information I can share related to the review of the impacts or answer any other questions when we get to the new business item or at any point.
Okay. What I may ask, do we have any public comment on this? May want to
We have several.
listen, if it's okay with council, get public comment, and then you can ask questions after that.
Mayor, the first two that came in, I'll read from emails from today. The first one is from Katie McCallan, residing at 125 Toll House Court. I'm very much in favor of gating Kingsley Estate. I work every day, and the number of cars that cut through the neighborhood during rush hour, speeding and hardly stopping at stop signs is very scary. The bus stop for our kids is at a stop sign, and so many cut-through cars pass by the stop sign in the dark mornings. I worry about the safety of the children. Lastly, I was really concerned by the man who approached the children out playing on Quayside Drive a couple of years back. It's important to me for the safety of my kids and my safety while out walking that we privatize the neighborhood and eliminate the cut-through traffic. So many of the cars drive through like it's a main road instead of a neighborhood. The next one is Jeff Harris, who resides at 16680 Quayside Drive. I have 3 young children, and safety is always a concern. Yes, there are a lot of people that cut through our neighborhood getting to their next destination. The reason they are cutting through is because they are in a hurry, which of course increases the chance of someone small getting hurt or killed. Obviously, the cutting through in Kingsley is going to increase as additional neighborhoods are developed. To speak on the concerns of a gate located near our entrance, I live in a neighborhood previously in Kingsley Estate called the Highlands, which is roughly a quarter mile away off the same street, Freemanville Road. This is a gated neighborhood. The property values in this neighborhood, like all surrounding neighborhoods in Milton, have increased tremendously over the last several years. All of the Milton real estate agents that we work with for the sale of our previous homes use the gates as a selling point to generate a higher value for the homes sold in this neighborhood. There is no reason this logic would not apply to Kingsley Estate. Although I can appreciate the concerns for a decreased value for a property located near the entrance, there is no evidence to support it. In fact, it's just the opposite. A gated neighborhood is advantageous to everyone's support. In fact, it's just the opposite. To support value, including someone near the entrance. I would even argue that if a gate does not get through at this time, that too much traffic could potentially bring property values down. I would now Mayor would like to invite Philip Kennedy to the podium, please.
My name is Philip Kennedy. I live at 16870 Quayside Drive, Milton, Georgia. Stephanie Kennedy, myself, and our 2 young kids live in the first house in the neighborhood on the back end where all the cut-through traffic happens daily. We moved to Milton because we were chased out of Cherokee County due to the rapid growth to find ourselves in a cut-through neighborhood. The cut-through traffic has gotten out of hand. Most of the people cutting through the neighborhood have a Cherokee County license plate. We have lived in our neighborhood for almost 4 years, and this is what we have experienced. Excess speeding daily, rush hour traffic before and after school, rush hour traffic with daily work commuters, random cars parking at the nightclub in the middle of the night, exchanging Lord knows what in the middle of the night. I have no idea what's going on. People parking cars at the clubhouse and going for long road bike trips. A few years ago, we almost had a child abducted from their driveway. It was documented on the news. Doug Adler almost lost his kids when walking them to a bus stop. A car ran the stop sign in our neighborhood and almost took out his kids. Semi-trucks cut through our neighborhood. Why? Because their GPS is routing them that way. Nothing like going to your mailbox and having a Pepsi semi-truck cutting through your neighborhood. I don't allow my 6 and 9-year-old boys to play out front without my presence due to the cut-through traffic and the constant speeding. As Cherokee County grows, we will continue to suffer without gates. To my neighbors that oppose this, I want to say, you are my neighbor. If you need anything, I will be there for you. I wish the best for you. But when it comes to the health and safety of my kids and the kids in my community, I will stand up and do what's best for them. I will be their voice. Our family moved to a neighborhood not off Highway 92. City Council, you have done a great job with the roads, the new roundabouts, and managing the traffic through the city of Milton, at the same time keeping the beauty intact of what makes Milton truly special. Kingsley Estates needs your help. The children need to play safely in their neighborhood. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter when something terrible will happen due to the high volume of cut-through traffic. Thank you for your time, your service, your dedication to making the city of Milton a very safe and special place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Tammy.
Next, I'd like to invite Trey Talwater, my apologies, to the podium.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Glenn Tillwater, 305 Quayside Drive in Kingsley Estates. The community we call Milton today, I've called Milton my home for almost 30 years. I moved my family back to Milton and Kingsley Estates several years ago. I still tell my boys today when we drive by the old Milton High School in Alpharetta, that's where Daddy went to high school, at the old Milton High School. That's where Daddy played football. And admittedly, that's also where Daddy dresses Elvis and sang Blue Christmas to his classmates every year. So Milton holds a fond place in my heart. It's largely part of the reason why I moved my family back here several years ago. But another reason why was I wanted my family to have a safe place to live. I wanted my kids to have a safe place to play. And I wanted my wife and I to have peace of mind, allowing them to do so. We moved here from Decatur, just east of the city. My wife and I met in Georgia Tech. We moved to Decatur to allow her to finish her medical school residency at Emory. She's an emergency medical physician servicing our community today. We spent a number of years in the city of Decatur. Now, city of Decatur is a great city. It's got lovely green space, cultural diversity, outstanding restaurants. It's a great place to visit. Recommend there you go in the daytime if you've not yet had an opportunity to go down there. One downside with living in Decatur, though, is if you're going to live there, you've got to become accustomed to living with crime as part of your everyday life. In my time there, I had the unfortunate experience of having property stolen from my home. A neighbor had to call me while I was on vacation to inform me that somebody had broken into my house, kicked my door down, ransacked my house. And I had the unfortunate experience, too, of encountering somebody at my door at 2 a.m. in the night wanting to explore the inside of my house. So when it was time for our family to expand and it was time for my oldest son to start school, it was not a hard decision to say we wanted to move out of Decatur. I was elated when my wife agreed to allow us to move back here to Milton. Since moving back here, though, I must say I've been surprised, at least caught off guard, to be honest, in some ways disappointed by some of the events that have transpired over the last few years here. And I won't go into all the different events. To mention those, I'm sure that other folks have already documented those or will speak to those that have been cause for concern, certainly cause for pause. Those are the reasons why I reaffirm my support for this resolution for myself, my family, and my neighbors in Kingsley Estate. Let me briefly talk to the traffic issue as well from my experience. Admittedly, living in a cul-de-sac, I don't have the benefit of seeing the racetrack of Quayside Drive on a daily basis, but every day I take my two kids to school, and when I return from Birmingham Falls, I return through the entrance off of 372, going to my home on the east side of the neighborhood. When I do so, it's not unusual for me to drive through the neighborhood and quickly see several cars pile up behind me as I drive through the neighborhood, paying close attention to the speed limit, 25 miles an hour, adhering to all the stop signs, look left, look right, then go. The tailgating alone is enough to tell me that the people behind me are not pleased with the pace I'm moving through my neighborhood as they're trying to get through as well. I must admit, though, on more than one occasion, some folks choose not to wait at all, just drive right past me, speeding through the neighborhood to get around me. So the traffic issue certainly is a problem. As Philip said, it's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when we're going to have a really tragic accident within the neighborhood. So it's with the culmination of these things, I ask for your support in approving this resolution. I ask you to allow us to keep our neighborhood just a little bit smaller, a little bit safer, allow us to have just a little bit more peace of mind. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite Patrick Davey to the podium.
Hi, I'm Patrick Davey. I live at 16645 Quayside Drive in Milton, Kingsley Estates, and I'm on the portion of Quayside that experiences all of the cut-through traffic. I'm happily retired. I spend a lot of time working in my yard, and I walk the neighborhood daily as part of my exercise routine. And I tell you that only so that you will realize that I have regular exposure to the traffic that goes through Quayside. And I would simply make two observations. They've been noted before. Those people who are cutting through routinely travel consistently faster than those in the neighborhood just going about their business. The second observation I would make is that it doesn't appear to me that Quayside Drive was ever intended to be a thoroughfare of any kind. If there's a car parked on the street or a service truck or anything on one side, it is impossible for two cars coming in the opposite direction to pass at the same time. One or both must stop and allow, hopefully in a courteous manner, car to proceed. Now, that doesn't always happen in a courteous manner, however. And then when the person using the cut through to save time is discouraged because they had to wait a few times, then they just accelerate more. And I also believe that our privatization committee has done a wonderful job of presenting this to the residents in a complete fashion with regard to the steps involved and the communication process throughout. And I would simply urge you to support the request. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Tammy?
I'd like to invite Ned Gilbert to the podium.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ned Gilbert. I live at 16775 Quayside Drive. And I am in favor of the privatization of the gate. The stop sign that is being referred to is right where I live. So you drive up the backside, right on that hill, we have that stop sign right in front of our house. Now, I am the proud father of a 3-year-old little girl and an 8-year-old little boy. And every morning we are out there at the bus stop. There's a bunch of kids out there. It's why we moved up from the city to Milton, one of the main reasons. And, when, 4:30 hits, I make sure that my kids are nowhere to be seen out front because I fear that they're going to get hit by someone that's racing through through Cherokee County or, just using our neighborhood as a cut through. So that stop sign right there that everybody keeps alluding to, that's right where two small children live. I saw the initial presentation and I've heard several reactions, and I think about the best public interest in mind when you're making this decision. And I think you see by the support that we have from a neighborhood perspective and the support of our children in our community, that would be in your best interest. So I appreciate your support for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy, if you please call the next speaker.
I'd like to invite Jeremy Smith to the podium.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jeremy Smith. I live at 16420 Quayside Drive in Milton. Thank you for everything you've done. I'm here to speak in support of this resolution. I have two children, 8 and 9 years old, Abby Lynn and Hayes. And my primary and really only concern for this matter has to do with their safety. In addition to their safety, the safety of the other children in the neighborhood. For reasons that have been spoken so far and will continue to be spoken tonight, I just simply ask for your support of the resolution. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Tammy?
Andrew Fisher, you're welcome to the podium.
I don't like public speaking, so,
Me neither.
so I'll make it quick. The whole thing you've heard is safety.
Andrew, if you
line.
wouldn't mind to just state your name and address for the record.
Sorry.
That's all.
Andrew Fisher, 16480 Quayside Drive.
That warms you up now.
Okay. Now, similar to some of the other folks, we moved up from Brookhaven in 2019, 3 small kids. We live on the other side of the neighborhood from the clubhouse. So safety is the primary concern. We're putting in a playground and we have a pool there. So I want a safe environment where my kids can travel from one end of the neighborhood to the other without having to worry. It's very frustrating to drive through our neighborhood, like some folks have said, and see people tailgating and tailgating me, flying by. It is very frustrating. So the main concern is safety, and I hope you guys can see that and you'll vote for the gate. So thank you.
Thank you. Tammy, please call next speaker.
Mr. Martin Rohinski, you're welcome to the podium.
Good evening, Council. I'm going to go a little off what I thought I prepared as my comments because there's a lot of folks in the audience.
If you wouldn't mind just stating your name and address for the
I
record.
apologize.
No.
Martin Rohinski, and my address is 16895 Quayside Drive in Milton.
Thank you.
Most of the folks in this audience don't know us, and they're in favor of the gate. And I guess we look like the bad guy because at this time we're opposing it. But we don't want to oppose it. If anybody thinks we're not aware of safety of children, we're soon to have, and you may have heard this before, our 14th grandchild. A lot of them live in the neighborhood. They come and visit. So we have small children. It's not like we don't understand the safety issue that's involved here. I told you last time that I put 47 years ending up as the head of state police and the head of several police departments. So I'm well aware of traffic safety. I say that again for the audience more than yourself. I know you heard it last week. Now, after the meeting on November 15th, we took your advice very seriously. The president of the HOA is a gentleman, and he is a gentleman. His name is Mr. G, Michael G. We met several times for well over an hour and a half each time. We talked on the phone for several hours combined. We tried. We tried to be cooperative. We were always gentlemanly. There's a sticking point. The best the HOA can tell me is that they don't intend to put a portion of the gate on my front lawn. They don't intend to. But if they do a civil engineer study and the engineer indicates that's the best way or the easiest way to go, then I'm going to have a gate looking at me from my front lawn, not on the street, but a portion of that gate on my front lawn. That's the stumbling block. We weren't able to resolve that issue. If I get some assurance that you're not going to build a portion of that gate on my lawn, then go ahead and build the gate. If the community wants it, I'm in favor of it. We're good citizens of the community. We keep our house good. We pay our HOA dues. We try to be good citizens. We always have been and will continue to be. So it's not a point that we're opposing the community and we want the kids not to be safe. That's the furthest thing from the truth. What I don't want, and what I want to stand firm for, and I think you folks would too, is I don't want a gate on my front lawn. So seeing that we were at an impasse, I ended up going to a real estate attorney and advising them of the situation. And I dropped off. I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at it, but it's a one-page brief that talks about who actually has the right to privatize the community. But anyhow, the bottom line is this: give me some assurance. Get your civil engineer in there and let him do this study. Once he does his study, he can talk to me in some concrete terms. Tell me where that gate is going to be placed. If it's not in the middle of my lawn, go ahead and build the darn thing. But please don't build it in my front lawn. And that's the whole story. And I, too, am there to help my neighbors if they need help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Tammy, if you please call the next speaker.
Michael Aaron, you are welcome to come to the podium.
Good evening, council members. My name is Michael Aaron. I reside at 405 Podium Court, Milton, Georgia. First off, I just want to say I love all my neighbors and I don't view any of my neighbors as a bad guy. So I think all of our opinions are very valid here and we should all have a chance to voice them without being feel like you're a bad guy. So I'm here in support of the resolution for the abandonment. I have 3 small children and I value their safety above anything else. You know, recently I had a life-changing event. I got diagnosed with cancer and I had to get a liver transplant 3 months ago. So I'm standing here pretty good after getting gutted and redone for 3 months.
Wow.
One of the things I gave solace in while I was going through that was, should the unfortunate event happen where I wasn't around for my family, I was leaving them in a very safe and good place to live. And I believe Kingsley Estates is that. The one item there that is of concern is the traffic going through that is not, they're not from residents of that neighborhood. People go through there, they speed, they're not careful, they don't live there. And there's no reason for them to go use our neighborhood as a thoroughfare. So I'm not gonna belabor the point. There are other people who are more eloquent than I that are going to be able to speak to this, but I urge you for your support in this resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad you were able to come up here and speak tonight with your health issues. Tammy, if you please call the next speaker.
Our next speaker is Sasha Marcinchek. Did I get it right?
Took me 40 years to learn how to say that, so I'm very impressed. Sasha Marcinchek, 16700 Quayside Drive, Milton, Georgia. First off, I'd like to thank the council members for letting me talk about the great gate debate in Kingsley Estates tonight. You know, our family moved in January of 2013, and it's changed quite a bit. I believe we were house 30-something in the subdivision. We had a 4th grader, we had an 8th grader, we had a junior in high school. And we went through a lot of the same concerns, but it was much less because we didn't have near as much travel, not near as high of an uncertainty coefficient as there is now. Fast forward many years and 3 times as many houses, and that's changed. And through the years, we've seen, and you may or may not be aware, you may or may not have heard these stories before, but we've had stories of people knocking on the back door of a patio door for a wife that was home by herself or during the day. Luckily, nothing happened there. The person left and got spooked and ran away. We had stories of people having mail stolen from their mailbox on more than one occasion, stories of people speeding through the subdivision on a consistent basis. And you've heard all those, so these are duplicitous in nature. But those are real, and they got so real at one point that you may be aware of this. This is the second time we've gone down the route of privatization in Kingsley Estates. The first time we didn't get quite this far, but we did a lot of the research, found that the property values on average would increase 2 to 5%. We knew that we'd have to take over the roads and privatization, as you know as well, but we didn't quite go that next step. And unfortunately, a few years later, there was that near abduction that you've heard about a couple times, and I know at the last meeting the same thing. That's reality. The world has changed. There's a lot more things going on. Things are happening a lot faster. We all know that. There are more people coming through, which makes the likelihood that something bad or catastrophic is going to happen greater than it's ever been. And that's why you see places like Creekside get gates and get privatization, because the same issues. And I'll leave you with this thought. I've worked for AAA for 17 years. And as part of my job, I've been asked to testify on traffic safety and safety issues with both state and state Senate and state House committees on certain things. And one in particular that I think is particularly apropos for tonight. A few years ago, you may remember when there was a big debate over whether we should hike gasoline taxes and whether we should have a luxury tax for hotel rooms of $5 a night so that we could get funding to fix roadways because roads were buckling up and things were happening. And I always had my notes. My public affairs group is really good about giving me my notes ahead of time, saying, here's our position. I got done doing the presentation, talking, and for the first time ever, the committee chairman turned to me and he said, hey, what would you do? Well, I didn't have that in my notes. So I had to realize, took a second and I thought about it and I said, I'll tell you this. No one ever wants to pay more money if they don't have to. No one ever wants to go through significant change that may or may not be necessary. But when something bad happens, something catastrophic, everybody always says, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you make that change? And at that time, you may remember the bridge in Minneapolis that collapsed. And there was plenty of documentation that said it should have been fixed and it wasn't. And everybody said, well, why didn't we fix it? And we have that what if stuff going on all the time. Hindsight's 2020, life isn't. And I think that I would give you the same answer tonight if you asked me that question is, if something really bad happens, we're going to all be sitting here saying, why didn't we do that? Why didn't we do something that could have been prevented or could have easily prevented that? So I'll leave you with that thought. Certainly, if you haven't deduced already, I'm in favor of it. And I do think we're unique in the sense our kids are all grown now, out of the house, in college, married. We don't have that same fear that we used to, but we were in those shoes not too long ago, and we can certainly appreciate that, as well as the Rohinskis. If I was him and his wife, I would probably be having the same questions about that, and I think those are very reasonable. But I do think the safety features and minimizing the risk far outweighs what might be negative about it. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Amy, please call next speaker.
Christina Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Christina Mitchell. I live at 16530 Quayside Drive, and I too am in support of the resolution. I've been a resident of Milton for almost 5 years, but only of Kingsley Estates for the past year. And last year when I told my friends and neighbors that I was moving to Kingsley, multiple people said, oh, I knew that. I cut through there to go to my son's baseball practice, or I cut there to go to my parents' house. I cut there to go ride horses. Everybody knew Kingsley Estates is a cut-through neighborhood. And I had this aha moment, like, are we making the right move moving across Milton? But it's a beautiful neighborhood, a family-friendly neighborhood, and we need to keep it a family-friendly neighborhood. And that's where the safety is a concern to me. I have 3 teenage children. So they're not playing in the street, on the sidewalk, in the front lawn. They're mostly hiding in their bedrooms, but they are starting to drive. I have a new driver. I'm going to have a new driver next winter and another new driver the following winter. So I'm very much concerned about their safety when they're on the road, if they're being tailgated into our neighborhood, that they're not going to feel confident to keep their slow pace and to stop at the stop signs and to do what they need to do to keep themselves and the young children in the neighborhood safe. There's children playing in front yards. There's kids shooting hoops in the driveway. It's a lovely neighborhood. People walking their dogs, walking down to the amenities. Let's keep this neighborhood safe as we can and prevent any accidents from cars speeding through the subdivision. The majority of the households have voted in favor of the privatizing of our subdivision and repaving the roads, as some stretches of our roads, particularly Quayside Drive and particularly the cut-through side, have weathered heavy traffic for well over a decade now. Quayside Drive is actually ready for repaving, and our residents have voted in favor of privatizing and incurring that cost moving forward. That would make it a lot safer and also reduce the increasing traffic for those who live along the cut-through. It's a win-win for Kingsley and a win-win for Milton, and I fully support and appreciate everything our HOA board has done to get us to this stage of the process. If you could just honor the majority and also vote in favor and support of making our community safer, I would appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Amy, if you'd please call the next speaker.
Christopher Lewis.
Good evening. My name's Christopher Lewis. I live at 16765 Quayside Drive. I've come to speak in favor of the proposal. As my neighbors have mentioned, speed is a problem. I have two small children, but I think there's other incompatibilities within the neighborhood. It was mentioned the roads are small and we have lots of cars that park on the side. I've had the personal experience of driving through the neighborhood and having a group of cyclists come through, 30 or 40, riding down at full speed. They don't stop at the stop sign. When there's a car parked in there, that entire group is forced over the other side of the road and puts everyone in a very difficult position for how to pass, as was mentioned earlier. The neighborhood, we had hoped for was one where our kids could go out and play. But I think as we sit here today, that's not possible. My biggest fear is when our neighbors move in, they have children and they're playing out in the road. The first thought is to go over and talk to them and reassure them that they should probably think twice, because not everyone who's in this neighborhood is from this neighborhood and spends the time to be thoughtful about their speed and the care of the folks that live in there. I can appreciate my neighbors who are worried about property value and gates. I'm not sure I can put a price on my child's life, but I think a gate, if it has to be moved a few feet one way or another, I would think we would do everything we could to accommodate that. But my hope is that the board will vote in favor of the resolution that we put forth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please call the next speaker, please.
Hey, Lopez.
Good evening. I live in 16730 Quayside Drive. My name is Jorge Lopez. I have lived here for a whole of 4 months. Recently moved from Washington State. We moved to Beaufort, and then we drove to Milton and fell in love. And so here we are. I want to echo some of the other speakers and say thank you for your service and thank you for making Milton such a wonderful place. We have really loved it here, and we hope we're never moving again. I'm here in support of the measure, and I won't echo what all of my neighbors have already said because I agree with them, and I think you have heard the message. But I have two small children, and everything they have said, I also subscribe to. I want to leave with one observation. As I mentioned, we moved here 4 months ago. We bought our house. Our agent was very clear with us of telling us, hey, this motion is happening of privatizing Kingsley Estates. I didn't make much of it, but I was really thankful that she mentioned it, and she insisted on us talking to the HOA if we had any questions. And I just want to say that I went from being somewhat indifferent to then moving in and experiencing the issues that my neighbors have already talked about. And that makes me fully behind this initiative. So thank you for considering, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, or welcome to Milton also. Thank you. Please call the next speaker.
Doug Adler.
Good evening, Doug Adler, 155, see if I can raise that a bit, Toll House Court. Thank you for your time tonight. As the gentleman was just saying, you lose your thunder as you go through the night, so I appreciate the neighbors sharing their concerns. My wife and I, Renee, are in agreement with the resolution. We are hopeful that you'll go forward with that. I actually was part of what we called the privatization or the gate committee. I was a board member in Kingsley. I worked with Sarah some years ago getting stop signs put in place that Ned mentioned. They do work most of the time, but not all the time, unfortunately. And that's one of the reasons for the privatization, as you've heard tonight. I just wanted to say just two quick things maybe that haven't come up that the board might, or the council may consider if anyone is kind of debating their position. One of the comments we've heard over the years was, what would this do to traffic? I know Sarah had some charts up about that, but King Road is less than a mile up the road north of us off of Birmingham Highway. So someone coming through Cherokee, instead of turning right and then left into Quayside Drive, they could turn left, go north on Birmingham and take a right on King Road and end up on Freemanville and then Henderson. And that road's built for it. It's not a neighborhood street. The other thing is, my understanding was that 67% of the community needed to vote in favor. I presume 67 was the number because of, I guess it would constitute a supermajority. We had almost 80%, pretty substantial. So just to close with an ask, which would be, we would be grateful if you voted in favor of the 80%. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, please call the next speaker.
Mayor, the next speaker would ask me to read only. It's from Renee Adler, and she would like for the record that she is in support of the abandonment.
Okay.
Next, also, Megan Lewis, who is here, would also like for me to voice her support for the record of this item. London Bradley, who is also here, is in support and has asked that I share that they feel the construction of the gates for the Kingsley Estate construction is the best interest of the residents of Kingsley Estate. I also have been asked by Becky Bryan, who is here in the audience, to read her comment. She resides at 16810 Quayside Drive. She says, we moved our family into the Kingsley Estate neighborhood about 5 years ago. We believe this would be a nice and safe place to raise our 3 children. We did not choose a home on a busy highway, but instead chose a neighborhood in which the majority of people coming in and out should be our neighbors, providing a safe environment for our children. Since we moved in, the amount of outside traffic coming through our neighborhood has increased tremendously. People use our neighborhood as a cut-through. Many people drive at excessive speeds and fail to yield at the stop signs. We now do not even feel comfortable sending our 10-year-old daughter out to the mailbox to check the mail, nor do we feel comfortable letting her walk a few houses down the street to play with her friends. Our oldest son was learning to drive about a year ago. We were stopped in the road trying to turn into our driveway, and our youngest daughter was playing there, so my son was waiting for her to move before he pulled in. The car behind us speeding up and actually passed my son on the road right in front of our house because they were too impatient to wait. This could have been catastrophic had my son pulled in as the car was passing us. This, unfortunately, is not an uncommon event in our neighborhood. We specifically did not want to live in a house on a busy highway or street, and that is why we chose to buy a home in our neighborhood. In addition to the concerns regarding the traffic constantly going through our neighborhood, we are fearful that this might also lead to a child being hit by a car or abducted by someone passing through. As you know, this has already been attempted once. Because this neighborhood has entrances both on Freemanville Road and Birmingham Highway, this offers the perfect escape route for someone trying to take a child. This compromises the safety of our children and our families who want and deserve a safe place to live. It would be difficult to explain to the parents of an abducted child that this might have been prevented had we been granted the right to have our neighborhood gated. It seems plausible that if someone has already attempted to take a child, that it might happen again. Gating our community is the desire of the majority of the people living in Kingsley Estate and very important to providing the safest place for our families to live. Next, Mayor, I would like to call Brian Barnhart to speak.
Good evening. Brian Bernhardt. I live at 300 Quayside Court in the neighborhood Kingsley Estates. I'm here to, speak about being in favor of the resolution. I've lived in Milton, or what was previously Alpharetta, for 31 years of my life. I've lived in several neighborhoods along the way. I went to Milton High School, so I've been around the community for a long time. Short stint away as a young professional, moved back with my wife, really to, come back to the community to start a family in a safe area, in a good community, which is now Milton, obviously. Everybody from the neighborhood's already sort of said the majority of what I wanted to say. I think there's a couple other things that I just wanted to add. My profession is dealing in risk management with corporations. When looking at risk, there's some key variables at looking at it. One of it is frequency. I believe the study that was delivered in the documentation, or at least what I read, announced there's an additional 235 cars a day are coming through the neighborhood, or at least that's the estimate. So that increases the frequency of a tragic event happening to one of our children 235 times a day. You multiply that over the year, that becomes a lot of different chances for somebody to get hurt. I've talked to Trey before, who was up here and mentioned coming home from school, having a line of cars behind me. I see this. So my kids aren't allowed to, I've got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, 2 boys, and they're not allowed to leave the top of the street. I live on a cul-de-sac that is out of the main thoroughfare, but they're not allowed to go see their friends. We have to put them in our vehicle, drive them to their friend's house, even though it's, right around the corner in the neighborhood, because we don't want to take the risk of them, being injured. So, that's one thing that I thought was pretty critical. The other was, nobody mentioned this either. So a couple years ago, or a year ago, and I'm just going to get the name of it, there was a group of people in the neighborhood, I believe they're called the Georgia Peach Youth Club, and they were going door to door, and had children doing this. And I think since that happened, we actually sort of, as a community in the neighborhood, chased them away. But 14 people of that organization are now in jail for human trafficking. So, anything that can keep our kids safe. This is not a gate thing, it's a safety thing. I went through all of the missions and the value statements and the plans. Safety is a key piece of the community. So supporting this and asking for your support in it, to me is directly in line with what we want for the community. So I just ask for your support and echo the sentiments of the rest of the neighbors that have sort of been up here today. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more public comment?
Yes. Next speaker is Kenneth Simon. Okay, thank you. Yes, I see your support. Thank you. Next is Angela Green.
Might want to bring this down. Okay. Milton City Council members and Honorable Mayor, my name's Angela Green. I live at 16615 Quayside Drive. I'm authorized to speak on behalf of the Kingsley Estates HOA as Vice President. First, I want to thank Sarah Leaders for all of the hard work she's put into this project. It has taken many hours over many years, so thank you, Sarah. At our first meeting, I provided council with an overview of the grave safety concerns that our residents have. You have heard the theme echoed many times this evening.
We've been dealing with this problem for over 5 years. We live in a neighborhood of families, and we should not have literally hundreds of additional cars on our streets every day. Quayside Drive was never intended to be used that way. Simply said, our cut-through traffic increases the chances of something tragic happening in our neighborhood. 250 additional people driving through our neighborhood streets every day is absurd. And those numbers are from October 2021, a recent traffic study conducted by the City of Milton. And I just want to point out that those are pre-COVID numbers. We know that just anecdotally, right now, the traffic in the neighborhood is much more calm than it has been in the past. So when everybody really heads back to work, we anticipate it going back to where it was before. Now, aside from traffic, I'd like to address what I perceive may be your question so that we can move forward with this approval. I have 3 main points. The first, our roads are in disrepair. Some are even classified as poor on the PCI scale. And currently, this is the city's responsibility to bring them up to an acceptable standard and then maintain them going forward. As a neighborhood with almost 80% agreement from our owners, we have agreed to pay to repave our roads. The only reason why we're willing to do that is because we have such a serious problem with cut-through traffic. That should speak volumes to all of you. My second point is regarding the concerns of the Rohinskis at Lot 69 and the corner of Birmingham Highway and Quayside Drive. We have never discussed placing any portion of the gate on that property. His claims and pictures with the red flags are misleading. You're going to hear from a surveyor, Tony Falia. He's a licensed surveyor. He's here to explain all of the boundaries in case there are any questions. And he's going to explain exactly where our plans are to put the gate. And this is just to avoid any confusion and just put this to rest. Also, in the documents provided to you by the HOA, you can clearly see, based on the correspondence between us and the company we plan to hire, Controlled Access, that there have never been any plans to place the gate on that property. And if Sarah has the opportunity a little bit later, she can show you the maximum footprint drawing. It's also in your packet, but that was made by Sarah Leaders, and it explains that we actually don't need any additional space on the exit side. Exiting the neighborhood on the Birmingham Highway side, we have the space that we need. If we do need space, it would be on the other side because of the entrance. So in your packet, you will also see a letter from Alan Daniel. He's a very respected home appraiser and has appraised 20,000 homes in North Fulton. He states in his letter that homes in a gated neighborhood typically command a 2 to 5% premium in homes not in a gated community. And as a very conservative estimate, we expect our properties to increase in value by approximately $30,000. Now, that's a really conservative estimate. This should eliminate any concerns about gates detracting from home values. In a conversation I had with Mr. Daniel via email, he also made the comment that Lot 69's proximity to the busy Birmingham Highway is far more of a detractor to the value of the home than a gate in the front of his property. Now, not on the property, however, in front of his property. Please also see the artist rendering of the gate to get an idea of the placement and aesthetics. Again, I'd like to reassure you that we will install a beautiful stone and iron gate. The gate will be professionally landscaped and will only add to the value of our neighborhood. As an HOA, under the guidance of Sarah Leaders, we have gone through every required step in our quest to privatize. This has taken many years. We are acting in the supermajority. Again, 80% of people in our neighborhood want to privatize our streets and are willing to pay for it. We are asking council to grant our request to privatize. We are ready to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Cameron, please call the next speaker.
Mr. Anthony Falia.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Fela. I live at 4955 Blooming Court in Cumming, Georgia. I am a registered land surveyor in the state of Georgia. I own Accurate Surveying and Planning, and I was hired by the HOA to perform as-built surveys on both the entrance for the Birmingham side as well as the Freemanville side to determine curbing, right-of-way, property lines, fences, et cetera, easements, you name it. The exhibit that Sarah had put up earlier clearly shows those boundary lines. That was going to be a preliminary drawing for the HOA to just determine what's available as far as space. As the process started to evolve, it was brought to my attention that there was potentially an issue with the owner of Lot 69, Mr. Rohinski, worried that the proposed improvements might be situated on his property. As a registered land surveyor in the state of Georgia or an engineer, the number one charge that we have as professionals is to safeguard the life, health, and property and to promote the public welfare. On my own accord, after hearing of these potential issues, I went back out to Mr. Rohinski's property and personally staked the property line where the right-of-way is along the front of Quayside Drive. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Rohinski that day. We talked for probably an hour, and I walked him along there to show him exactly where these points were. I painted the nails that were set in the ground just so he knew exactly where everything was and he was comfortable. I think there might be confusion with maybe some of the residents or Mr. Rohinski or anyone else, but let me clarify the difference between private property and the curb. Typically, you'll have, let's say, a 50-foot right-of-way. What that means is 25 feet from the center line in both directions from the street is typically county right-of-way. That means that they can do anything they want, sidewalks, utilities, you name it. So the typical street's only about 24 feet wide. So the distance from the curb to the actual private property line is not your real property. However, you do maintain it because no one else is going to. So to clarify that the proposed improvements will never come close to encroaching onto his private property, I just want to let you know from the curb to his private property is 13.5 feet. And the proposed column, according to Controlled Access's drawing that we worked with to determine if there was enough space, is a 2x2 column. So fitting a 2x2 column between the curb and private property within 13.5 feet is certainly feasible. So I think that you all comfortably can say that no proposed improvements will ever encroach onto Mr. Rohinski's property or any other of those property owners within the community. I'm here if you guys have any questions mathematically. I don't have an opinion on this whole thing. The numbers don't lie. It's just math to me. So if you all have any questions, I'm certainly here to answer them. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good, Tammy.
The last speaker, Mayor, is Michael Gee. G?
Good evening. My name is Michael G. I live at 145 Toll House Court. A lot of people here stole my thunder, so being last, I guess, don't have a lot of opportunities. But I do want to call out a couple of points and maybe reiterate a couple of points. I have 4 children, but I'm not going to be here talking about safety. The things I want to talk about is the financial impact that the city and the taxpayers would incur if we did not privatize. And I think Sarah Leaders put an estimate of $465,000 in a 5-year expenditure forecast. That's a pretty significant impact. And again, Angela said, we are willing to take that cost for the safety and the betterment of our community. So that says a lot about what we're willing to do. Secondly, and you all have a packet and you probably hopefully read through some of that stuff. Our intent and everything else, and I did have a long conversation, multiple conversations with Mr. Rohinski, very cordial, professional, no personal issues with him whatsoever. And I guess where we didn't come to a conclusion is the expectation of a guarantee. And I don't know, where I come from, the only thing you guarantee is death and taxes, right? So we tried to convey to him that our intentions are not to do that. We have drawings, we have things like that that clearly states that we are not going to violate his property line. We have statements from the controlled access, the gate company, We have statements from an appraiser. All of those things kind of addresses the need, the concern that he has with regards to personal harm, because we don't want to do that. Our intention is to have a gate but not harm anybody in this manner if we don't have to. Like I said, during this process, we just aren't there yet to guarantee anything. We don't even have approval as of yet. I can assure you, if we did get approval, we'll go through the necessary process, go through civil engineering plans, and hopefully that will then put this to bed. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Rohinski is still concerned that things may not go his way, which he has a fair concern. But we can't answer that as a board. We're not civil engineers. So there was nothing that we can do to give him that reassurance. Only thing that we could do is show him our intention, show him our plans, show him that there is common area on the other side of the street. If we did need space, there's plenty of space on the other side. So there's no real reason to even encroach upon anywhere near his property, and which Tony just said, the surveyor, there's 13 and a half feet if we wanted to. So to me, this is not about a legality issue with what we're going to do or not going to do. It's more about the concern or possible concern that it may happen. And we weren't at a position to guarantee anything. But all we can do is just tell them this is what we planned and tell you all this is what we're planning. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. So
Yes, sir.
I'll close the public hearing on this for right now. I'll open up for council discussion. One, I'm gonna go ahead and give Sarah a heads up and possibly Ken the question I'm gonna ask, but I'm not gonna ask for an answer until this comes back before us. But I think it's pretty obvious there's lots of support. The residents of the neighborhood have overwhelmingly voted in support of this. I think they're all, they know the downsides with the costs and things, the liabilities. But we also understand the concerns of Martin and his family. So I guess my question would be, I understand there's no civil drawings yet and all that, but if you could be thinking about it, is there anything the city can do at a later point if we approve this to have some kind of influence or to have this brought back before staff at least, to look at it to make sure that everything is done to eliminate the concern of the affected neighbor on that. Again, I don't know if there's anything legally we can do or whatever, or if in your opinion that what you see is that it should be able to be done with possibly the excess land on the other side. But again, I'm just throwing that out to be thinking about it before this comes back up, before it's a little bit later tonight. Is there any other comments from council on this? Laura?
Couple questions. Sarah, thank you. The packet was great. Had a lot of information in it. Could I see that maximum footprint drawing? Is that something that you have, or is I just want to understand where the gate posts would go.
So this is a layout that I prepared from the surveys that were provided by the HOA. So it does show the existing location of sidewalks and right-of-way and easements. The location on the left is the Birmingham Highway entrance. And to get the setback from the right-of-way can actually be a little less than this. I think it can be 60 feet. 75 gives a little more turning room for anyone that maybe stopped at the call box and not able to make the turn. But this shows and this is drawn as a 4x4 post, which I didn't know the sizes when I looked at the rendering. So this is double the size of what the gate structure could look like. And like I said, it could shift a little closer to Birmingham Highway and still be within the minimum setback. But this is the proposed location of the post. So the exit lanes line up with the fire department needs a 15-foot clear width of the gate. So a 16-foot lane would accommodate that clear width. And that it really lines up with the existing island that's up at the Birmingham Highway exit.
So, excuse me, is that where lot 69 is?
It is this lot, yes.
And is that the sidewalk? Yes,
Yes.
that's the sidewalk. So the post, which is, you made it double the size of what they were saying, and that's on the the side of the sidewalk closest to the road.
Correct, between the curb and the sidewalk.
Okay. Let's see.
Mind if I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Sarah, what is the standard, what's the width of the sidewalk that's being proposed right there?
5 feet.
5 feet. Thank you.
Anybody else while Laura's looking?
Yeah, when we look at this, Sarah, this drawing, do you have like an overlay that shows the existing road, or is this?
So the existing road is kind of the base of this drawing. Let's see. I don't know if I have the survey without the gating on it, but this is the existing back of curb, existing sidewalk. This would be a proposed island. This one is an existing island that could be extended. The existing edge of pavement on the HOA property side is on the
Like would cross over the existing sidewalk, so sidewalk would have to be rebuilt.
Right. So this gray hatched area would be possible added pavement if this width is needed to be able to not have a car block access, so that a resident could enter while a visitor is stopped at the call box.
So in looking at this drawing then, where you're showing the proposed monuments of the gate on the side, it would fall on the road side of the existing sidewalk.
Correct. On the side that fronts
on Mr.
lot
Rohinski's
69.
property side.
Yes.
Good, Laura.
Yeah, so, and then as far as the legal requirements, we've done, the title search to the plat. I mean, we are all sound to.
Yeah, this is very thorough. Everything's in your packet. We've got identification of the right of way. We've got all the recorded plats, our backup to in the packet. Everyone has been notified that needed to be notified. We've gone above and beyond public hearing.
Okay. And my only other question is probably, Sarah, you can't answer this, but with regard to the increase in the cost to the homeowners within Kingsley, how is that notification? Are they given notice of the dues, or is?
So as part of every single HOA is different.
Okay.
Every single HOA is going to have their own communication style. From my personal experience, I can tell you, we had to communicate to homeowners before they would sign in support or against exactly what we thought the cost was going to be in terms of operating that. So my guess would be is that the homeowners in Kingsley Estates are well aware of what this is going to cost them.
Including the roads and, okay, just wanted to make sure I'm learning as I go here. Thank you.
Okay, Paul?
Actually, can we go back to the slides again, please? The one that was up is actually one I can use. There's no other changes to either Freemanville or to Birmingham Highway. All those infrastructure requirements are already there. So there's no encroachment, any changes to that. The deceleration lanes, acceleration lanes, nothing has to be changed. Those are all existing.
Correct.
Yep, okay. And this may not be able to be answered by you, Sarah, but in the renderings that we have in our packet, is that, maybe it's a question for Ms. Green from the HOA, the renderings based on the outcome of tonight's vote, if there is do you expect there to be any change to the renderings? What would it be that we can create from the comfort of the council and or for the community that this is likely to be the design of the actual gate? There wouldn't be something more imposing or less imposing. This would actually be pretty darn close to the rendering. Can you comment on that? Yeah, please.
So we had this artistic rendering created to show council and also to make sure that the Rohinskis felt comfortable and, oh, it's gone. But can we scroll through a little bit, possibly? There are many different views.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
It's more,
super.
actually, it's
Thank you.
more a yes or no
Okay,
question.
well,
Is
so
that-
I'm not a civil engineer, but I don't see any reason why it wouldn't look exactly like this. If I thought that it would look different, I would have explored all of those options. I mean, I feel like we have left no stone unturned.
Right.
And I believe that it's going to look exactly like this. And part of the confidence I have with that is having spoken with Sarah about the maximum footprint. I don't see any reason why we would need to go any further, particularly on the exit side. If we did need to go further, once again, we definitely would make it go towards all of the amenities area. We just have so much space over there. There would be no reason why we would want to affect somebody's personal property and instead not take from our, the property that we have available to us.
Right, thank you. Yeah, the reason for my question is these are not terribly imposing gates. They're elegant in their subtlety. And so reason I'm asking is that I can't imagine you'd want to portray something like this and have it be something remarkably different that could be significantly more, significantly grander in scale and size that would actually be a detriment to Mr. Rohinski than something like this. This is pretty unimposing.
No, and that was our goal. We wanted to, have it serve its purpose to stop the cut through traffic without affecting anybody negatively. And I think I said last time, I live at the entrance of Freemanville Road, and I'm concerned as well about the aesthetics of the gate, and our plan is to make both gates look just like this, and it's going to improve definitely the aesthetics of the neighborhood. We're going to have it professionally landscaped, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't look just like that.
Okay, thank you. So one more question for legal, sort of in keeping where you were going. If it's the council's will to go forward with a motion to support this,
right?
Is it appropriate, or is it possible to consider a condition to be put on that in the motion to approve that there is consideration given if there were any reason to encroach into Mr. Rohinski's property that would have to come back before council for consideration?
Be challenging. Let me explain why. I mean, the whole process of abandonment is especially a two-step process. First is we have to declare something not part of the city's public roadway. That's the first thing. That's the actual abandonment. And then, of course, we have to get rid of it, which if you do this tonight, I know not now, but in the later agenda item, there's actually a form not only of resolution in your packet, but there's actually a form of the quitclaim deed, which vests then whatever the city owned into the HOA, thereby ergo it's private property. And this will be construction on private property. Now, I don't know, will there be a permit have to be secured? Okay, so there'll be a permit to erect the structure. If you wanted to...
Actually, I might be able to stop you there. Really, what it becomes then is a civil case.
That's right. That's right. It's private property. And when the speaker was speaking, I understand all the concerns, but there's no authority for there to be an encroachment on someone's private property by way of the structure.
Right.
So that would be a civil case. If the board wanted to aspirationally make a recommendation that it be substantially in conformance with some of the architectural or site plans you've seen, that's fine.
Okay.
Truly, but the reality is between a civil engineer, between your permitting process, and between private property rights, you're going to have this covered.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so having lived through this as part of an HOA board, what I can tell you is that the city, when we discuss the process of managing road abandonment so that subdivisions could gate, I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about what was the criteria, what was the rules that could be followed to ensure that these things didn't happen without really the support of the HOA, of the people that were going to be impacted. And we didn't pick 67% accidentally or 63% or whatever the number is. It wasn't an accident. We did it very thoughtfully and with consideration that, look, if they can pass that standard, if they can get that much support out of a subdivision, then they've really got support. And the challenge that we have is we've set that bar. The HOA has performed to that bar. And so what we really now need to do is follow on and say that this could be possible because of that support. In fact, they went past their 80%. Now, some folks are still going to have problems. In Crooked Creek, we had, we're very large subdivision, 640 homes. And let me tell you, getting 67% of 640 homes was very difficult. But to this day, well, actually, the only people that remain in sort of opposition to the gates are folks that were in opposition from the beginning and never moved. We've seen enough turnover in the neighborhood. People want in because of the gate. So there are certainly benefits to this, and there are certainly benefits that are unknown to the people that live there because they just haven't gone through it yet. But I would say that we've put a very high standard up for subdivisions to control road abandonment for gating. We've done our job. I think what we really need to discuss is this in the right, is this in the best instance of public safety, all those other criteria that we need to discuss. I think that's really where we are.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Carol.
So I appreciate the Rohinski's concern, and I've was not here last time, but I've read up and I appreciate it. But I also appreciate and trust the intentions and the reputation of those who are in favor of this. And it sounds like all of that has been considered, and that there will not be encroachment, and that the net good is completely apparent. So I support it. I am also very sensitive to the problems with traffic living on Providence, which has become a nightmare. So I do wish safety for you, and if this is safety and quiet, so if this is what it takes, you have my full support.
Okay. All right. So there's no zoning agenda, so we'll move on to unfinished business. Tammy, if you'll please call the next
Mayor,
item.
that item is consideration of an ordinance amending certain sections within the Milton Code, Chapter 20, Article 2, floodplain management in accordance with the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District Model Floodplain Management Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance to provide for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, to provide an effective date, and for other lawful purposes. It's agenda item number 21339. Public Works Director, Ms. Sarah Leaders.
This item is really just a housekeeping item. We have a permit we get from the state. We have to submit an annual report every year. And in our most recent audit of our report, it was noted we didn't have the model ordinances adopted for stream buffers, floodplain, and stormwater management. So this item is simply modifying our code to bring in the elements of the model ordinance as required by our permit. And again, that permit allows us to permit stormwater discharges and regulate developments through issuing permits.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. We have any public comment on this?
We do not, Mayor.
Okay, I'll close the hearing. No questions from council. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 21-339.
Second.
Do I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Moore? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, Tammy, can you please call the next item?
The next item is consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 20, Article 5 of the Milton Stream Buffer Protection Ordinance, agenda item number 21340. Ms. Sarah Leaders.
Like I said, this is the same situation as before. It's part of the model ordinance that we're required to bring those elements into our ordinance as part of our permit from the state.
Okay.
Quick question.
One question, too. Do we have any public comment?
We do not,
I'll
Mayor.
close the public hearing now. Laura, go ahead with your.
So nothing about the distance, the stream buffer distance changes. We're just updating the ordinance.
Correct. And I believe the language changed from impervious setback to impervious buffer. There was just a minor language change in the definition of those setbacks.
Okay. Anybody else? Do I have a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 21-340.
Second. Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Moore for approval. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. We'll move on to new business. If Tammy, you'd please call the next item.
Mayor, that item is consideration of a resolution to abandon all public rights-of-way within the Kingsley Estate Subdivision, agenda item number 21341. Sarah Leaders.
So this is just the formal consideration of the presentation that was made earlier. And it includes both the resolution to abandon and then the items associated with the disposing of the property should the resolution be approved.
Okay. Do we have any public comment?
We do not, Mayor.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing on that. It sounds like, I'll give everybody a chance to talk, but, from what I'm hearing, and I know my opinion is certainly respect the residents, overwhelming residents' desire to gate it, but also there's some concern with Martin and his family with protecting their property. So, I would like to at least, if we can't make it ironclad, but at least make it behooving, incumbent on the folks actually doing the work and whatnot to be as strict as we can, if, whatever we can say that would try to protect them. So, but I'll open up to anybody else. Or I'll open the motion.
Make a motion if you want.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 21-341 and to substantially conform with the architectural renderings regarding the placement and the aesthetics of the gate on both entrances, Birmingham and Freemanville.
Second.
Okay.
So Councilmember Bentley, so the motion was to approve the resolution that is in your packet, which will have the effect of approving the quitclaim deeds as well, with the additional, sort of the aspirational request that it conform with the site plan as closely as. Fair enough?
Yep.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay,
And a second.
I have a motion as read by Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Cookerly. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Mayor, my apologies. Who seconded that? I didn't.
Carol.
Okay, Carol, I'm sorry.
Cookerly, Councilmember Cookerly. So, and I do want to
Please
thank
speak up.
everybody. We value all your opinions and concerns, and thank you for being here tonight. Now we'll move on to mayor and council reports. Joe, Laura, we've got one more meeting, so. But,
I just have a quick comment.
Sure.
We had one of our lifelong residents.
Could I ask everyone to please be quiet?
Meeting's still going on.
Meeting's still
guys.
going on, please. Oh, well.
I don't care. I'm really talking to y'all.
No.
Anyway. It's okay.
Kind of rude. Legally, you can't. Ken, we've got a citizen that wants to say something. I don't know how we do that.
It's out of order, but it's late, Mr. Mayor. If y'all want to allow it, allow it.
Do what?
If it's out of order, but it's late. If y'all want to allow it, allow it.
Go ahead.
Never saw the rendering of the gate. Never. They never came to us and said, this is what it's going to look like. Never.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't aware of that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to mention the last, or maybe it was, I can't remember, what's the last Friday, when I was in touch with Steve, we had Joel and Peggy Cochran, who live on Thompson Road, lifelong residents, I mean, before any of the city of Milton. Joel passed away. He's been to our veterans breakfast every year that he's been able to come. Peggy fell the morning that he passed away, and it was a disaster on top of one. Anyway, I texted Steve, and we sent over our fire.
The Milton Cares
That's it.
program.
Anyway, it's such a great program because, they were able to go and assess her and tell her where she needed to go, especially. So I just wanted to thank our first responders and Joe and Steve for, about a program, you just don't know how to connect people. And that was such a great connection in a real time of crisis, sad time for the Cochran. So thank you so much for developing that program. And I just would encourage anyone that knows of anyone that's elderly that falls, goes to the ER a lot, this can be a call to assess, if they need to go. If they don't, usually they need to go, unfortunately. Anyway, thank you.
Sure, and certainly the big loss to the city of Milton with Joel passing away. It's a great asset to our community. Okay, anybody else? If not, we'll move on to staff reports, and we'll start with Chief Austin.
Joe?
Oh, sorry.
One quick one. I had the pleasure of attending the Milton High School football game on Friday evening, and they once again were victorious, which now carries them to the state championship this Saturday night. I hope that we'll get a fine showing from the Milton community in support of our young athletes that are demonstrating a high level of professionalism, sportsmanship, and just good camaraderie, and that we support our high school at the game on Saturday. They're playing Collins Hill.
Okay.
And how can we not talk about last week's event that was so fantastic? The city's celebration of 15 years in your run as mayor. It was fabulous.
That's right. It was fabulous.
Staff was over the top, gracious, and had all the details, and I commend you all.
Yeah, I'm going to do a formal thank you to staff, but staff and all of you too. Great, it was overwhelming.
We're talking about last week, the party.
And the singing.
And the singing.
Music.
And the tree.
We expect that every
I will
night.
accept full credit on behalf of my sister.
And sing double, sing double.
I thought you were the same.
Twin Ken.
Isn't the mayor expected to sing at his last meeting?
Sorry?
Isn't the mayor expected to sing at the
He
last
is.
meeting?
20th, it's coming.
All right, Chief Austin.
Many hidden talents among us, right?
Thank you.
Greetings, Mayor, members of council. Looking at our crime picture, our overall crime numbers are actually down from this time last year. We're down a little over 2% in overall crimes from our already low 2020 numbers. This was largely driven by a 5% reduction in crimes, in our property crimes, though we are slightly up in violent crime from 11 incidents to 17. However, the driver behind our slight uptick in violent crimes involves several incidents between known victim and offenders. Unfortunately, a lot of that goes back to family violence. I would like to point out that one of our recent drivers of property crime, though it is a bit down, was 16 entering autos, which occurred throughout the city over the span of 2 days in both the Windward and Crabapple areas. Through diligent detective work and working in tandem with our citizens, we were able to identify the offender and make an arrest on all of the cases, and the person responsible is currently off the streets.
Wow.
On our roadways, though we are up in motor vehicle crashes from last year, when traffic levels bottomed out due to COVID, We're just below our 3-year average of total crashes with no increase in the number of personal injury crashes from our 3-year average. Out in the community, a few weeks ago, we rounded out our latest Citizens Police Academy with over 30 citizens participating, which was our largest Citizens Police Academy yet. We were able to accommodate that because of our new facility. So that worked out quite well, and the feedback from that was very positive. And also, as we round out the year, we're looking forward to our annual Shop with a Cop. This year, we'll be having a holiday party with all of the participating agencies to be held on December 18th at Alpharetta City Hall. So we look forward to that time of engaging with some of our younger citizens during this holiday tradition in our community. And that wraps up the police report unless we have any questions.
Laura?
I have a quick comment on the way here. I slowed way down because you had presence on Bethany Way.
Yes.
And I appreciate that because that is a highway. So just the presence there, everyone was going at a nice rate of speed.
Yeah, I actually had someone flash their lights to me as I was going down that way. So I don't know what that means, but
Do that.
Big party thank you.
yeah.
I saw the same thing halfway down, seeing the police car right there. And there was actually a resident had come out and talked to the officer.
Good.
They were probably hugging them. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sarah, you don't really have to talk. You've been up here all night. You're probably worn out.
You own the whole agenda.
You did.
All right. Just got 2 slides here. Let's see. We recently pulled some of our fiscal 21 numbers and just thought this might be a good meeting to share what those look like and kind of our goals for the next year. So first of all, from the maintenance side of Public Works, looked at our number of service requests. Those could be either calls we get some requests through the app, which we're working on a rollout of some upgrades to the app. The emergency work orders, we saw 13 of those in the whole year. Those are things that have to be responded to very quickly, whether it's a tree or a stop sign down. The debris removed, that's going to be everything that's picked up in the right-of-way or some of our other public facilities. And so 519 tons have been removed from the city property over the course of the fiscal 21. The street sweeping program was a success. Removed 48 cubic yards of debris out of our gutters on those curb and gutter roadways. And then we repaired and replaced over 1,100 linear feet of sidewalks. So that's going to be the trip hazards where a panel raises up too much and we're able to either just to grind that down, or that included some panel replacements that we do as we come through with the paving. On our pavement management, the major resurfacing, we resurfaced over 8 miles this year, and we did 4.7 miles of rejuvenation, so the treatment to help roads last a little longer when we can get that treatment done in the early years of life of the roads. And then our major infrastructure improvements, we have currently in 21 had 12 projects that are in the pre-construction phase. So that's either in concept, design, or right-of-way. And we completed 5 major projects this year. 2 roundabouts that we've talked about a lot. We're very proud of the 2 Hopewell Road roundabouts. We constructed over 2,400 linear feet of new sidewalk or path. Most of that was the Cogburn Road project. And then we did the major repair on the Saddle Springs culvert. The bottom pictures, the middle is during the culvert construction. You forget how rough it looks in the middle of construction, and then the picture at the bottom right is the finished product out there, which turned out very nice. And then the pictures on the left are the Cogburn sidewalk. So we've got a lot of things in the works still for this coming fiscal year, and just wanted to highlight the past year, and we're looking forward to more improvements coming.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions on that? Okay.
Sarah, that 519 tons, was most of that deer carcass?
We'll see how next year's numbers compare.
It's unfortunate how many deer strikes that we had recently, everywhere you go. Thanks.
Okay. Dave?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just want to say, I really need to get some PowerPoint slides together for my next report. It really gives us
That's
some
okay,
kick.
you're just IT. I know.
Every content needs a little bit of kick, right? Maybe next time, we'll see.
Sarcasm. You should be leading the way with technology.
Oh, okay. Well, let me lead the way with some stats. Yeah, I know you love it. Mayor, I know you're not going to be enjoying my staff reports anymore, but you can always tune in on YouTube. Check it out. Late night ones are the best.
Do it with beer in my hand.
Anyway, okay, so basically where we're sitting at in our help desk queue right now is 28 tickets, which is really low. Our SLAs are being met, and over the last 3 months, we've opened 962 tickets and closed just over 1,000. Yeah, that's wonderful. So, so just as a new follow-up on the chip shortages I mentioned in my last staff report, they are still a real thing, and it looks like they're going to continue. Even if shipping lanes get opened up, it's still going to be a shortage situation for possibly to the end of 2022. We'll just have to see how that works out. But we are pivoting with that as best we can. We are trying to give lead time, like I said on my last report, on ordering items. Give as much time as the vendors need to get them in. But other things we're doing as well is that we're searching for alternative places to order parts. You know, a lot of the major vendors we go through have back orders, but we found some other vendors that do have compatible parts that we can use, and we're doing that where we can. So that's helping a little bit. One other option we have is that if the shortages do continue, we do have the option on some of our infrastructure to extend the warranties rather than replace it at the end of its normal life cycle. So if parts are still a problem, we can just extend the warranty on most of what we have and continue working that way at full strength. And finally, one thing we did in our budgeting cycle was to plan for moving some of our applications to the cloud. Different software we use will also work in the cloud. So if we move our devices off our local infrastructure, move them into the cloud, that will give us the ability to free up some space for any new applications we have coming down the pike. And it also aligns with our COOP and disaster recovery plans because we're not as centralized. We're decentralizing our infrastructure, getting things out there so if we're ever in an emergency situation, we'll still have access to those items that are online. So that is pretty much it, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions?
No? Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, David. All right, that will conclude our meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Mayor,
moved.
go ahead. Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn and a second. I think it was Councilmember Moore and Councilmember Bentley on the second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.